Chapter 36. It was time for Meng Qi to rest. She was a qi refinement cultivator after all. She could do it without sleeping for a few days and nights, but she would still feel tired. Ranwen. La, thank you, junior sister. Lu Qingran bowed to her again. She was wearing a long green robe that the disciples of the Cool Breeze Valley often wore, and she was about to give him a handshake. Her long hair was tied up, and a white jade hairpin was hanging on her hair. Lu Qingran was very beautiful. The mountain breeze blew her hair, and a few strands of hair brushed past her fair cheeks. She had a slender waist and a willow-like back, and her eyes were bright. She was really beautiful and fairy-like. These few days, I flipped through all the books I could find, and I only saw introductions about the divine devouring vine. The books did not mention the name of this thing, and they did not even mention the symptoms and characteristics after being injured. Lu Qingran's voice was clear and pleasant, and everyone present heard it clearly. So even Master and the elders did not realize that senior brothers and senior sisters were injured by the divine devouring vine. Lu Qingran looked at Meng Qi and said, "Junior sister Meng, how did you determine that senior sisters Lan Zhuxian and the others were injured by the divine devouring vine?" "This is one of the reasons." Lu Qingran paused for a moment before continuing. "The divine devouring vine is from the demon realm. When junior sister Meng entered the Cool Breeze Valley, she said that she grew up in Cool Breeze Town and had never left there. However, not only did you recognize the divine devouring vine, but you also know how to treat it. Previously She looked at Yin Mingfeng and said, "I've asked Elder Yin. There were no records about the divine devouring vine in the Cool Breeze Valley's library. This is the second reason. Junior sister Meng wanted to treat the people injured by the divine devouring vine, and the 5 elements green crane happened to be nearby. Before junior martial sister left, demon cultivators hid their tracks and came and went like ghosts, chasing after us day and night. After junior sister Meng left to find the 5 elements green crane, the demon cultivators did not come again. Yet it was these demon cultivators who used the divine devouring vine to injure senior sisters and senior brothers. This timing is too much of a coincidence. This is the third reason." Lu Qingran spoke clearly and tirelessly. His tone didn't sound aggressive. In the end, she bowed to Meng Qi once again. "Junior martial sister, you have been running around for a long time, so I should let you rest first." But Lu Qingran turned to look at the Cool Breeze Valley sect leader. She continued, "Master is kind and benevolent. She took great care of me and taught me the Tao and gave me a new lease on life. He treats all the disciples of the Cool Breeze Valley equally, and has never done anything unjust or unfair, or selfishly favoring any disciple." Lu Qingran paused for a moment before looking at Sun Yan with her bright eyes. This junior doesn't dare to criticize Elder Sun for protecting junior sister Meng. However, this junior is unable to accept his criticism of Master. Her back was ramrod straight as she met Sun Yan's gaze, neither servile nor overbearing. Her opponent was a nascent soul stage expert, and his strength was far superior to hers. Lu Qingran was not afraid at all. Her eyes were clear and awe-inspiring. Wow. Su Junmo stood beside Meng Qi. He had restrained himself for a long time. At this time he couldn't resist and muttered in a small voice, "Mimi is very strong. This isn't asking you a question, Meng Qi. This is pointing a sword at you." He glanced sideways at Sun Yan. 50 spirit Xiuzha, fighting above their level. She is very daring and very filial. What's more, what he said sounded quite reasonable. He spoke quickly and softly. Other than Meng Qi and Chu Tianfeng who were standing beside Su Junmo, the other people only saw his lips move quickly, but did not know what he was saying. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xioma both looked at Su Junmo. The other people's gazes were completely focused on Lu Qingran and Meng Qi. They looked at Lu Qingran, and then at Meng Qi. Lu Qingran's words did not seem unreasonable. "Meng Qi, would she explain?" Meng shimmy. Lu Qingran took a deep breath. "Shiji is not making things difficult for you or suspecting you. But the disciples of the sect, especially the Shiji and Shixiang who are injured, do have doubts. You almost caused chaos because of shimmy, and angered Elder Sun Yan." She looked at Meng Qi and said, "Junior martial sister, Can you answer these questions of mine and solve the doubts in our hearts? Meng-Chi's eyelids drooped slightly, and she did not immediately speak. Other than Su Junmo, none of the disciples present spoke. Sun Yan couldn't help but cough lightly. He had criticized her because he had been too angry. He hadn't thought that it would cause such trouble for Meng-Chi. Cough cough. He took a step forward and broke this almost awkward silence. This matter started because of me. Since it is a misunderstanding, Sun Yan had a humble personality. Otherwise he would not have been sent by the palace master of Burning Sky Palace to help Chu Tianfeng. He had stood up for Meng-Chi before, and now he did not want to cause trouble for her because of him. Elder Sun. Meng-Chi opened his mouth and interrupted him unhurriedly. Senior sister Lu Qingran is asking me, let me answer. She smiled gratefully at Sun Yan. There was nothing that couldn't be said. She had indeed heard the name of the divine devouring vine from Su Junmo. However, when she had met Su Junmo in her previous life, he had already been injured by the divine devouring vine for 10 days, and could not even transform. What Meng-Chi had seen was a fluffy five-tailed white fox. At that time, Su Junmo had already fainted and was lying there quietly. The dark red bloodstains and mud had dirted his long white fur. He looked pathetic and pitiful. Meng-Chi could not obtain any information from the unconscious white fox, Su Junmo. She could only smell the faint floral fragrance that lingered in the air. The floral fragrance was unfamiliar, but not unfamiliar. There was the smell of the forest after the rain, mixed with the sweet smell of white peaches and the bitter smell of pine leaves. Apart from that, there was also the bitter and sweet smell of burnt sugar. That smell was actually very pleasant, and would not make people feel that it was dangerous. Meng-Chi had already checked Su Junmo's body. Apart from the wounds on his body, she could not find any other reason. At that time, Su Junmo was already equivalent to a spirit-severing cultivator, and was even more powerful than he was now. Just those superficial wounds could not have made him so pathetic. She had also thought for a long time before recalling the descriptions in the books she had read from the floral fragrance. At that time, she had not met her teacher, and had learned most of what she had learned from the Clearwind Valley Library. Apart from that, she had used the spirit stones she had accumulated to buy books from the Cloud Immortal Pavilion. There was nothing that she could not tell others. Meng-Chi looked at Lu Qingran, and smiled faintly. In the Cloud Immortal Pavilion, you can buy 3 types of scrolls for 200 first-grade spirit stones. She paused and said, Demon Travel Notes, Clear Wind Town's Herbal Records, and Demon World Scenery. As Meng-Chi spoke, she took out 3 bamboo slips from her bracelet storage bag. These were very ordinary books she had bought from the Cloud Immortal Pavilion. Because they only recorded local customs and travel experiences, and were not considered spells, they were sold very cheaply. Ordinary disciples of the Clearwind Valley could also buy them if they did some basic sect missions. Lu Qingran was stunned. Chu Tianfeng waved her hand, and the 3 bamboo slips flew in front of her. Although Clearwind Town is a small town, it is located at the border between the East Land and the Demon World. There are cracks in the boundary from time to time, and demon cultivators cross over. It is recorded in this book that there are vines and plants in the demon world with multicolored flowers. They use the flesh and blood of living creatures as nourishment, and are extremely dangerous. After being injured, the body will emit a strange fragrance, sweet like white peaches and bitter like caramel pine. Meng-Chi said lightly. Lu Qingran was stunned. Meng-Chi's expression did not change, and she continued to say calmly, This book is a record of what the senior had seen and heard after entering the demon world. It also mentioned that she had seen green vines that can bloom multicolored flowers, and use the bodies of strange beasts as basins to nourish themselves. It is abnormally evil. The fragrance of the flowers is bitter and sweet, like caramel pine. When smelling it, one should avoid it. As Meng-Chi spoke, she pointed to the 3rd bamboo slip. This book is a list of all kinds of plants that the senior had seen in the demon world. There are similar records in it. In addition, it also mentioned that strange beasts injured by this strange fragrance will be unbearably thirsty, and drink a lot of water. She paused and said, In addition, there are several similar books that can be found related records. She looked into Lu Qingran's eyes. When I entered Senior Marshal Sisterland's tent that day, I smelled this fragrance. My Clearwind Valley is a medical cultivation sect, and most of the senior martial sisters have a light medicinal fragrance. I have never smelled such a smell in the sect. So I was suspicious and asked casually. As expected, they were injured by the vines, and they were thirsty and easily hungry. Mengqi said. I suspected that they were injured by this thing. Even so, Lan Zhuxian, who was supposed to soak in the 5 elements green crane blood, was still standing there. She looked at Mengqi with a pale face, and her eyes flashed. How do you know what it is called? How should it be treated? She thought of Sun Yan's accusation and became angrier. Did these books mention it too? No. Mengqi shook her head. So you were indeed lying to us. Lan Zhuxian suddenly raised her voice. Do you not know how to treat it at all? You want to kill us? Mengqi looked at Lan Zhuxian. She could not say that she had really cured a person who was injured by a divine devouring vine. So she could guarantee that the method was correct. To explain this problem clearly, it involved too many people. However, she could tell them the process and thoughts she had when she tried to treat Fox Su's injury. Thinking of this, Mengqi could not help but look at Su Junmo again. At that time, she had tried many methods to save his life. The other party was also having a hard time. However, when the talkative fox was in pain, he would grumble endlessly, and she was also tortured badly. Everyone come back quickly. Don't touch that 5 elements green crane first. Lan Zhuxian turned and ran toward those people. Mengqi does not know how to treat us at all. She is lying to us. She screamed and pulled those injured disciples back. She lied to us. Lan Zhuxian's voice was smug, but there was also an indescribable fear. If Mengqi lied to everyone, what should they do about their injuries? Should they count on the sect master? Or, after Lan Zhuxian finished screaming, she suddenly fell silent. Her face was pale, and she turned her head in confusion. Mengqi stood in place with a cold expression. No one could tell whether she was happy or angry. Those disciples who were called back by Lan Zhuxian all stared at this scene in a daze. The wind blew through the forest, and the leaves rustled. The entire campsite suddenly became very quiet. No one spoke anymore. If Mengqi lied to them, she would not know how to treat them. In that case, those who had never heard of the divine devouring vine would not know how to treat it. What should these injured people do? Everyone looked at Mengqi, and then at Lan Zhuxian. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Junior sister Meng. Lu Qingran forced a smile and asked gently, so why did you lie to everyone just now? What should these injured senior brothers and senior sisters do now? It has been almost 10 days since they were injured. It's probably too late to find someone who can treat them. Mengqi frowned. That's right, junior sister Meng. Another Cool Breeze Valley disciple beside Lu Qingran said. Why did you lie to everyone? You wasted 10 days for nothing. It's too late now. That's right. The Cool Breeze Valley disciples all nodded. They had all heard how Elder Sun Yan spoke up for Mengqi and criticized the sect leader, and Lan Zhuxian mercilessly. Even all the Cool Breeze Valley disciples were embarrassed. Now they looked at Mengqi and were speechless. Anyway, she was not the one who was injured. Everyone was gloating over her misfortune. That's right, junior sister Mengqi. If you didn't show off previously, we might have already found someone else who can treat them now. Aren't you wasting our time? That's right. Mengqi's expression was still very calm. As if she did not hear the Cool Breeze Valley disciples mocking, she said calmly, the divine devouring vine's treatment is not recorded in the books. But, enough. Lan Zhuxian interrupted her sternly. How long do you want to lie to us? Junior sister Mengqi, yes. That's right. I shouldn't have said bad things about you behind your back. But even if you don't like me, you shouldn't have dragged so many people down with you. Lan Zhuxian pointed her finger and said angrily, dragging so many of your fellow disciples down with you. Is this fun? I just said a few bad things about you, but you want my life. You're really too vicious. Mengqi frowned. She looked past Lan Zhuxian and looked at the other injured disciples. I can treat the divine devouring vine's injuries. Are you willing to believe me? Those injured disciples all avoided Mengqi's gaze, not daring to look at her. But their expressions clearly said that they did not believe her. Junior sister Mengqi. Another disciple suddenly asked, "Is this divine devouring vine really that powerful? Why do I feel that something is wrong?" Su Junmo mumbled. Why did everyone suddenly start blaming Mengqi? It's not just wrong. Chu Tianfeng said in a low voice. This is what they are best at. Stupid and stupid. All of them have no brains. Chu Tianfeng stepped forward and pointed at the 3 Burning Sky Palace disciples who were also injured by the divine devouring vine. Come here. Yes. Those 3 disciples walked towards Chu Tianfeng. Young Imperial Empress. They respectfully saluted and stood still in the same place. Previously, I was poisoned by a 5th-stage demonic creature and was saved by this Mengqi. I trust her and believe that she will definitely save you. Chu Tianfeng looked at his fellow disciples. Are you willing to believe me? We are willing to believe you, young Imperial Empress. The 3 disciples bowed and said without hesitation, We are also willing to believe you. Okay. Chu Tianfeng nodded. He waved his hand and said decisively to the disciples who were originally ordered to take the 5 elements green crane's blood. You guys continue taking the blood. Mengqi, Chu Tianfeng said and looked at Mengqi. My Burning Sky Palace disciples are in your care. Young Imperial Empress Chu. Lan Zhuxian screamed. Don't believe her. There were rumors before that Mengqi colluded with demonic creatures. Otherwise, how could she, a Qi refinement cultivator, cure your poison? With a soft slap, Lan Zhuxian's head tilted to the side from the slap. She stood there in a daze and didn't come back to her senses for a long time. Only when she felt a burning sensation on her face did she suddenly raise her head and look at Mengqi in disbelief. Qin Xiaoma crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at her lazily. His pitch-black eyes were like an ice-cold abyss. A long sword floated beside him. It was this long sword that had caused a gust of sword wind to strike Lan Zhuxian mercilessly. You! Lan Zhuxian glared at Qin Xiaoma in shock and anger, but she didn't dare to step forward. I'm kindly reminding you. Qin Xiaoma smiled coldly and looked around at the Cool Breeze Valley disciples. He smiled sarcastically. Even if I give you 15 days, you can try and see if you can find a cultivator who can recognize the divine devouring vine and save you. As he spoke, he stepped forward and protected Mengqi behind him. But if anyone dares to speak rudely to Mengqi again, it won't be the sword that hits you next time. Let's go, Chu Tianfeng said to Mengqi. Everyone in the Burning Sky Palace trusts you. His voice wasn't soft, so everyone present should be able to hear him. Chu Tianfeng was in front, and Qin Xiaoma was in the back. Even Lan Zhuxian only dared to move her lips. Looking at Qin Xiaoma's sword floating in the air, she didn't dare to say anything. Mengqi didn't look at them anymore, and walked toward the 3 injured Burning Sky Palace disciples. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaoma followed behind her like guards. With the 2 of them together, no one in the Cool Breeze Valley was their match. Those disciples could only watch. Even the sect master didn't dare to act rashly against them. Go and sleep for 4 hours first. As soon as Mengqi stepped into the tent, Chu Tianfeng pulled her sleeve and pointed to a small tent. I'll call you when it's time. Mengqi shook her head. She followed into the tent where the 3 Burning Sky Palace disciples were recuperating. The inside was already filled with the smell of the 5 elements green crane's blood. Lan Zhuxian isn't afraid of death? Mengqi silently watched the 3 disciples soak in the 5 elements green crane's blood. She frowned and turned to look at Chu Tianfeng. Mengqi couldn't understand. No matter how stupid Lan Zhuxian was, she shouldn't have jumped out to oppose her at this time. Even if she doubted her. Even if she felt that she was lying. But wasn't she worried that if she wasn't lying, she and the other disciples of the Cool Breeze Valley would all die? Mengqi couldn't figure it out. She clearly wanted to explain why she could guarantee that she could heal the divine devouring vine's injuries. But Lan Zhuxian didn't listen and directly interrupted her. This senior sister was definitely not someone who wasn't afraid of death. Among them, the smell of blood was getting stronger and stronger. The 3 Burning Sky Palace disciples who were soaked in it gritted their teeth tightly, as if they were desperately resisting some kind of pain. Mengqi had never experienced this feeling before. But according to her understanding of Fox Su, Every time he was soaked in the 5 elements green crane's blood, he was the most talkative. So, it must be uncomfortable. They seem to be recuperating over there too. Su Junmo suddenly got into the tent and said mysteriously, "It seems that your senior sister Lu Qingran found a way to treat them. They are also recuperating now." "Yeah," Mengqi answered casually. It was said that senior sister Lu Qingran's medical talent was even above her own. If she could deduce the treatment method, she should be able to do it too. "Why did they say that to you just now?" Su Junmo asked again. "Aren't they your fellow disciples? Why do they seem to be unfriendly to you? It feels like they are looking at you as if you are an enemy." "Yeah," Mengqi answered casually. "It doesn't matter. They won't be enemies soon anyway." "Ha!" Chu Tianfeng's eyes lit up. "You've finally decided to come to the Burning Sky Palace?" Mengqi shook her head. But Elder Sun Yan was right. There is no point in staying in such a sect. She had stayed in the Cool Breeze Valley previously because of Elder Yan. And she was only a chi refinement cultivator. If she left the Cool Breeze Valley, it would be difficult for her to move around in the 3,000 worlds. But now she was not so worried. Just now, the jade scroll in heavens beyond vibrated slightly. That was a notification from the divine sense mark that Mengqi left in it. This also meant that the thing she had ordered in heavens beyond had arrived at the relay station. When she returned to Cool Breeze Town, she would be able to get those things. Mengqi's medical talent was extremely high, but her cultivation was really ordinary. In her previous life, when her medical skills were about to break through to the 4th rank, her cultivation was still at the foundation establishment stage. Later, her mysterious master thought of a way for her. The spirit stones that circulated in the 3,000 worlds contained rich spiritual energy. The grade of the spirit stones was distinguished by the purity and quantity of the spiritual energy contained in them. Cultivators' cultivation was actually to absorb the spiritual energy in the world into their bodies for their own use, and to store it bit by bit. When the body could hold enough spiritual energy, it would break through the current level and enter the next realm. It was just that it was not easy to absorb spiritual energy into one's body. Simply put, the richer the spiritual energy in a place, the more suitable it was for cultivation. But such places were often rare, and they were all occupied by large sections. Of course, the spiritual energy contained in the spirit stones was also very rich. It was just that it was impossible to cultivate with the help of the spirit stones, because it was not of the same origin as the spiritual energy in a cultivator's body. Mengqi's master really felt that her cultivation speed was too slow. Later, she thought of a way to design an array for her. The function of the array was very simple. It could convert the spiritual energy in the spirit stones into spiritual energy that could be directly used by cultivators for their cultivation. With this array, Mengqi finally succeeded in forming her core and entering the golden core stage before her medical skills broke through to the 4th rank. She was a little hesitant before, but the Dark North pill was auctioned off at a high price that was beyond her expectations. Mengqi simply ordered a batch of materials from heavens beyond to draw and activate the array. When these things were gathered, she should be able to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort, and become stronger as soon as possible. Mengqi originally planned to do this when she reached Burnt City to make herself stronger. But now, she changed her mind. Chapter 37. Su Junmo looked curiously at Mengqi. In the few days they were gone, Sun Yan had asked his disciples to find all the herbs she needed. Mengqi took out her small cauldron, drew a formation on the ground, and threw 2 spirit stones into it. By the way, she took out the spirit stones Su Junmo gave her from her storage bag. "I'll return them to you." When the 5 elements green crane suddenly appeared, Mengqi didn't have time to return the spirit stones. She now had a way to earn spirit stones, and Su Junmo had helped her, so she didn't need to accept such spirit stones. "It's just a bit of money, take it." Su Junmo looked at the formation on the ground. If he didn't see wrong, Mengqi casually threw a 4th grade spirit stone in. This girl was a chi refinement cultivator herself, and Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiuma were willing to follow her, so they were very generous. It was really amazing. Especially this Cool Breeze Valley, it didn't look like much. Where did Meng-Chi get so many spirit stones? Did she collect them to treat someone's illness? Or Su Junmo narrowed his eyes slightly, and he was more and more certain that Meng-Chi was the little Chi who sold the North Deep pill. That senior sister of yours looks pretty good too. There were only Su Junmo, Meng-Chi, and 3 injured Burning Sky Palace disciples in the tent. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaoma were also there, but his talkative nature had already been exposed in front of them, so there was nothing to hide. Although I shouldn't have spoken up for her, after all. She was just suspecting you, Meng-Chi. But she wasn't accusing you unreasonably, and what she said made a bit of sense. Su Junmo circled his fingers, and his thumb and index finger made a very short distance. So don't be too angry with her. I just asked around, and she stood up because she felt sorry for her Shurzuan being wronged. She wasn't targeting you. She's very filial. Meng-Chi turned to look at Su Junmo. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaoma also looked at him. There was some gloating in their eyes, and even looked like they were ready to watch a good show. Meng-Chi responded casually, but she still put the spirit stones aside. Then she turned her attention back to her small medicine cauldron. Meng-Chi took out a silver medicine knife and began to process some of the medicinal herbs that were not easy to handle. Su Junmo's heart itched. Now that he was closer, he could clearly see the array formation engraved on the handle of the medicine knife. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed it was made by a demon from the demon world's demons. Devour Novel Network. Of course, the most powerful person in the heavenly demon realm was his lord. Su Junmo's gaze turned to the miniature fire formation that Meng-Chi drew for refining medicine. He was not an expert in formations, but he had been by his master's side for a long time. Under his master's influence, his attainments in this field were far beyond ordinary people. Li fire formation? Su Junmo's eyes were sharp. He recognized it at a glance. It was a miniature version of the Li fire formation. Damn, this is too extravagant. He had already seen the protective formation that even he had been tricked. He had also seen the formation engraved on Meng-Chi's first realm medicine knife. Now he saw the miniature Li fire formation that the other party used to refine medicine. It can actually shrink the Li fire formation. Let me see. There are quite a lot of changes. The original Li fire formation here, and here are stronger. It's superimposed on the other 3 small formations. This way, the person who drew the formation can control the intensity and time of the fire. Therefore, this grand fire formation was specially modified to be used for alchemy. Is the person who did such a thing crazy? Su Junmo abruptly shut his mouth. The person who did this was probably his master. His wise, mighty, and lofty master who never got close to women. He worked so hard to create this simplified Li fire formation, just to please this little Qi disciple cultivator in front of him. This extravagance was simply too much. Should he praise him? Even when it came to coaxing little girls, his master was still lofty, wise, mighty, and invincible. What about it? Meng-Chi glanced at Su Junmo and asked. Haha, he's obviously a genius in formations. And he's very patient. He's very handsome at first glance. He's simply too good. Meng-Chi was a bit confused, but still nodded. She didn't dare to say anything else. In terms of appearance, Su Junmo, Chu Tianfeng, and Qin Xiaoma were all very good-looking. But even if they worked together, they still couldn't beat her esteemed master. Ha 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 ha. Su Junmo laughed embarrassedly again. Meng-Chi wasn't affected at all by what just happened. Her hands were still very steady. The prepared herbs were sent into the small cauldron one by one. The time it took was either long or short. Inside the tent, the smell of blood grew stronger. The expressions of the Burning Sky Palace disciples soaked in the 5 elements green crane blood also became more and more painful. In the cauldron, the herbs finally condensed into a dark brown liquid. Meng-Chi calculated the time. After 6 hours, she divided the liquid into 3 portions and poured it into the blood of the 5 elements green crane. Ugh! The Burning Sky Palace disciple on the far left also looked the youngest. His expression suddenly turned pale. He clenched his teeth tightly and still let out a painful sound. It will hurt. Meng-Chi said. Don't use Ling energy to resist. Okay. That disciple clenched his teeth and nodded lightly. In the blink of an eye, the 3 disciples were sweating profusely. Large beads of sweat slid down their foreheads and quickly entered their blood. The smell of blood in the tent became stronger. Ugh! A burning sky palace disciple suddenly moved slowly. There's something. It was rare for him to lose his composure. It came out of my wrist. Me too. Me too. As the 3 disciples spoke, they felt that there seemed to be cold slender crawling out of their wrists. The feeling was very uncomfortable and made their hair stand on end. Goosebumps seemed to crawl all over their bodies. However, they still followed Meng Qi's instructions and obediently soaked in the blood without moving. Soon, the originally calm surface of the blood began to ripple. "Fellow Taoist Meng, young palace master," a disciple exclaimed. "Look." A vine with a tender green bud slowly poked its head out of the blood. The small leaves swayed gently from side to side as if dancing in the wind. It looked very happy. Who would have thought that such a cute-looking vine would be such a ferocious thing? "Don't move," Meng Qi reminded the 3 burning sky palace disciples. She took out a porcelain bottle from her storage bag and slowly walked over. The porcelain bottle was filled with white powder. Meng Qi carefully sprinkled the powder on the tender leaves on the vine. The vine swayed even more happily, just like how a person would when they were happy. Soon it grew longer and longer and finally came out of the blood. Meng Qi's left hand had been holding the small silver medicine knife. Now she could see it clearly. She waved the medicine knife, and it steadily cut the vine's last leaf. The young divine devouring vine that was swaying happily just now seemed to wither instantly. The tender leaves fell off and fell back into the blood. The smell of blood instantly filled the air. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaoma could not help but look away. Only Su Junmo looked at this scene in shock. The divine devouring vine was a plant unique to the demon realm. The Red Fox clan, which had always been at odds with the White Fox clan, had 2 talented demon cultivators. They racked their brains to refine this divine devouring vine into a weapon. In the beginning, the demon realm did not know how powerful the divine devouring vine was. Even if they were injured by it, they did not take it seriously. Gradually, those people who were injured by the divine devouring vines were found dead. Their flesh and blood had been sucked dry, and only a layer of skin was left on their skeletons. These terrifying vines were entrenched on their skeletons. This kind of thing happened many times. At that time, the Demon Lord issued a Demon Lord order to prohibit the use of the divine devouring vine as a weapon. The entire demon realm was to exterminate this terrifying plant that could use flesh and blood as nourishment. The divine devouring vine seemed to have disappeared from the demon realm. For a long time, no demon cultivators were injured by this vine. However, 1,000 years later, they discovered that the divine devouring vine was not completely exterminated. Some demon cultivators also saw the divine devouring vine in the demon realm. However, at that time the demon realm was in chaos. The demon realm's aristocrats, who had stood at the peak of the demon realm for thousands of years, started a 3,000-year-long civil war. After the war ended, people were plunged into misery and suffering. The entire demon realm was originally divided into 9 heavens. 3 of them were almost razed to the ground. The fallen star sea in the center of the demon realm was filled with a bloody aura. It was said that countless great demon cultivators who had died in that civil war were buried there. The divine devouring vine grew crazily in this civil war. After the war ended, no cultivator could kill it anymore. However, the new demon lord still issued a strict order to prohibit the divine devouring vine from being brought into the 3,000 realms and the demon realm. This thing was also a terrifying existence for the demonic cultivators. Demon cultivators injured by the divine devouring vine could only be killed by a peak stage demon cultivator if they were willing to sacrifice their cultivation level. They had to reconstruct their flesh and blood. Otherwise, they would just be waiting for death. Su Junmo watched as Meng Qi cleanly killed the young divine devouring vine and felt dazzled. At that moment, he felt that he seemed to have understood why his lord valued this mere qi refinement cultivator. Looks were secondary. The key was that she was really too powerful. Just like that, she easily solved the problem of the divine devouring vine. Just based on this point, she was qualified to be a guest of honor in the demon realm. Meng Qi did the same thing. and killed the divine devouring vines in the bodies of the other 2 Burning Sky Palace disciples. It was easy for her to do it now, but in her previous life when she saved Fox Su, it took her a whole 3 months. At that time, she did not have any books to refer to and could only try it out bit by bit. The talkative fox was really talkative. Although she was in so much pain, she still told Meng-Chi everything she knew about the divine devouring vine. Also, the ones who injured the 3 Burning Sky Palace disciples were only those red fox girls. Otherwise, it would not be so simple. Those divine devouring vine sprouts that Meng-Chi killed fell back into the blood and instantly melted. Soak in it for another hour. Meng-Chi said to the 3 disciples, "This can make up for some of the spirit chi absorbed by it during this time." "Thank you, fellow Taoist Meng." The 3 Burning Sky Palace disciples raised their wrists at the same time. The strange vines that came out of their wrists had completely disappeared. Their wrists were as clean as before, and only a small red mark was left. Other than that, there were no other traces. Meng-Chi was also very tired. She kept her things and nodded at Chu Tianfeng and the others. Then, she turned around and walked out of the tent. The Burning Sky Palace had prepared a separate tent for her. If not for Lu Qingran suddenly questioning her, Meng-Chi could still rest for a while. Before entering the tent, she turned around and looked behind her. Most of the Cool Breeze Valley disciples were guarding outside one of the tents. Lu Qingran should be inside treating the injured disciples. She did not know what method Lu Qingran would use to treat the people injured by the divine devouring vine. Meng-Chi walked into the tent and pondered. She had heard from her previous life that everyone said that Senior Lu Qingran was extremely talented in medical skills and was rarely seen in the world. She had seen true geniuses. Regardless of whether they were sword cultivators or dharma cultivators, they always learned things very quickly and could infer other things by analogy. Meng-Chi could not help but feel her heart itch. However, she knew that the Cool Breeze Valley would not let her watch. Slightly disappointed, Meng-Chi sighed softly and took out the beast house from her storage bag. After Su Junmo joined, she did not let little Chi come out to breathe. It had been 5 days. The small beast house flashed, and the little white tiger appeared on the small bed in the tent. It was still lying there lazily, and its blue eyes were slightly more lustrous. Meng-Chi habitually reached out and rubbed its fluffy little head. "When we return to the Cool Breeze Valley, I will get what I need. Then, we will leave Cool Breeze Town and go to the Burning City," Meng-Chi said to him. She had already thought about it. Now, she had more than 200 grade spirit stones with her. Just these spirit stones alone were definitely enough to raise her to the perfected foundation establishment stage. This way, her ability to protect herself would be stronger than before. As for forming her core, she would wait until she reached the Burning City. Meng-Chi made up her mind and was about to pack up and rest. Suddenly, Fox Su's voice came from outside the tent. "Meng-Chi, I suddenly remembered." As he spoke, he pushed open the door and strode in. Meng-Chi did not have time to put away the little white tiger. She could only dodge and block in front of little Chi. Su Junmo immediately noticed little Chi. "This is..." He went forward curiously and looked closer at little Chi. "The white tiger spirit beast from the Trichiliacosm? It looks quite similar to the white tiger spirit beast in our demon world." As Su Junmo spoke, he reached out and wanted to scratch little Chi's chin. "But there are still some differences." Meng-Chi was slightly relieved. She was originally worried that Su Junmo would recognize little Chi's identity. She did not expect the little guy to hide it so well that it could even fool this fox. Strange beasts are not easy to train. "Meng-Chi, if you need help, feel free to come to me. Although I have never raised a strange beast before, I am definitely more experienced than you in dealing with them," Su Junmo said as his fingers were about to touch little Chi's chin. Little White Tiger, who was originally lying lazily, suddenly turned its head and tilted its head to the side. Meng-Chi's back was facing him at this time, so she did not see it. When little Chi avoided Su Junmo's claws, its half-closed azure eyes suddenly opened. There was a flash of starlight in its eyes. Meng-Chi did not see it, but Su Junmo saw it clearly. He suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked at the little white tiger in front of him in disbelief. Did he see wrongly? What flashed in its eyes just now was the shadow of the Big Dipper. Then wouldn't this little white tiger be? Wouldn't he be? Chapter 38. What are you trying to do? Meng-Chi turned around and saw Su Junmo striding toward little Chi. He reached out and was about to touch little white tiger's head. But before he could touch it, he retreated as if he was scalded. And nothing. Su Junmo, who could talk nonstop for half a day, stuttered for the first time. He took a step back and looked at little white tiger in bewilderment. Little Chi had already laid down lazily again. He rested his chin on his uninjured paw, which was wrapped in a soft silk cloth. He glanced at Su Junmo lazily with his blue eyes, looking innocent and clear. Nothing, Su Junmo murmured and repeated. Meng-Chi had already stood between him and little Chi, glaring at him warily. This is... Su Junmo stuttered, not knowing how to ask. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Did he see wrongly? The stars in little white tiger's eyes were unique to the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. Wasn't Lord's eyes also the Big Dipper stars? So this little fellow. Could it be? Su Junmo quickly glanced at Meng-Chi, then quickly looked away. Meng-Chi still looked very young. He looked like he was 17 or 18 years old, and the youthful elegance on his face had not completely faded. My lord is really ruthless. Su Junmo cursed silently in his heart, but he did not dare to say anything. After a long while, Su Junmo finally sorted out his complicated emotions. He took a deep look at Meng-Chi, who was protecting little white tiger behind him. The more he looked, the more he resembled protecting his cub. Su Junmo took a deep breath and said with a complicated expression, I'm going out. Meng-Chi did not say anything. He watched Su Junmo turn around silently and leave the tent quickly. His footsteps seemed a little frantic, and he even staggered when he was about to leave. The sound of footsteps didn't go far away. After going out, he should be guarding the door. Meng-Chi turned around and looked at little Chi, who was obediently lying on her stomach. Did Fox Su discover something? She mused. But that shouldn't be the case. With his personality, if he really discovered something, he definitely wouldn't be able to hold it in. Meng-Chi turned around and rubbed little Chi's head. She lowered her head and looked into the little white tiger's eyes. He shouldn't have discovered your identity, right? Meng-Chi asked uncertainly. Su Junmo came in too quickly just now, so she didn't have time to let little Chi go back to the beast house. Moreover, many disciples of Cool Breeze Valley and Burning Sky Palace knew that she had a little white tiger. There was no way he could hide it. Instead of hiding little white tiger in a panic, it would make Su Junmo even more suspicious. He might as well be more generous. Right now, Su Junmo's cultivation was about the same as Elder Sun Yan's. If even Sun Yan couldn't discover little Chi's true appearance, Fox Su shouldn't be able to discover it either. Little Chi tilted its head slightly and rubbed its head against Meng-Chi's palm. Meng-Chi couldn't help but smile as its soft fur rubbed against her fingers. She was indeed tired. She turned over and lay down on the bed, hugging little Chi and placing it beside her. The camp tent was simple and crude, and the bed was just an ordinary bamboo bed. I'm going to sleep for a while. Meng-Chi yawned and slowly closed her eyes. Her breathing gradually became long. Little Chi leaned on her arm and quickly fell asleep, just like it did in Cool Breeze Valley. Outside the tent, Su Junmo didn't leave. He paced back and forth full of doubts, but didn't know who to ask. In any case, he wouldn't dare to ask his lord even if he was beaten to death. Su Junmo paced around for an unknown number of times. What are you doing? Chu Tianfeng's cold voice sounded behind him. He and Qin Xioma walked towards him side by side. Both of them looked at Su Junmo warily. You two are finally here. Su Junmo jumped to Chu Tianfeng's side. After interacting with each other for a few days in the forest, he revealed his true nature from the beginning. He might as well not hide it at all in front of these two people. Do you know that Meng-Chi has a little white tiger? Su Junmo asked. We know. Chu Tianfeng nodded. A trace of vigilance flashed through his eyes. When Meng-Chi went to gather herbs, she picked it up from the valley next to Cool Breeze Valley. It was an injured little white tiger. He suddenly felt a little proud. Could this be considered a secret between him and Meng-Chi? I was with her at that time. Is there a problem? A little white tiger? That's right, Chu Tianfeng said. I don't know what hurt it. Meng Qi saw that it was pitiful and took it back to treat its injury. It looks a lot better recently. She should be preparing to raise it as a spiritual pet. So it's not Meng Qi who gave birth to it. Su Junmo suddenly shut up. What are you thinking? Before he finished speaking, Chu Tianfeng guessed what he meant. How is that possible? She picked it up not long ago. It was about a month ago. I see. Su Junmo nodded absent-mindedly. Just now, he had already imagined a big show between His Majesty the Demon Lord and his little runaway wife with a ball. In short, it was all kinds of sadistic love, lingering sorrow, and parting in life and death. So it was picked up. Then did he really see wrongly just now? Su Junmo turned to look at the tent where Meng Qi was resting. In fact, the shadow of the stars in the little white tiger's eyes just now was just a flash. In the blink of an eye, it completely disappeared. He had always been sharp, so he shouldn't have seen wrongly. Su Junmo frowned. The Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan was already the royal clan among the heavenly demons. 3 to 4 out of 10 demon kings were chosen from the Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan. Even the current demon king, his master, was also the White Tiger True Lord. The Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan was very powerful, but its members were very few. Using the method of calculating age in the demon realm, his master had already reached adulthood thousands of years ago, and had become the White Tiger clan's true lord for nearly 500 years. He still had no partner. Not to mention a partner who knew how many young, beautiful, and enchanting female demon cultivators in the demon realm wanted to become his master's lover. He never pretended to speak. Naturally, he didn't have any children. Su Junmo couldn't remember how long it had been since he last saw a young heavenly demon white tiger. So he might really have seen wrongly. He shook his head and even found it a little funny. Did this mean that the eunuch was more anxious than the emperor? Su Junmo and the other two chatted in low voices for a while. Not far away, the door of the largest tent where the Cool Breeze Valley disciples were gathered suddenly opened. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master and Lu Qingran walked out side by side. Lan Zhuxian followed closely behind them. She was in high spirits, and it was impossible to tell that she had just been injured. The Cool Breeze Valley disciples outside the tent all crowded around and greeted the sect leader at the same time. In an instant, the tent became lively. Chu Tianfeng frowned. No wonder even Elder Sun Yan, who had always been a good person, couldn't stand it anymore and said such harsh words. The Cool Breeze Valley was really too scattered from top to bottom. They were still in the wilderness, far away from the sect. Chu Tianfeng knew that young Master Scarlet Fox, who had followed and ambushed them previously, had been dealt with. But these people didn't know. Starting from the sect master, they seemed to have completely forgotten about this matter. From just now, no one was in charge of guarding. That wasn't right. Chu Tianfeng's gaze drifted to the entrance of the camp. There, Elder Yan Mingfeng sat cross-legged with a dark brown cauldron floating beside him. Of course she's fine. Lan Zhuxuan's voice was very loud and excited. Could it be that without her, we could only wait for death? Junior sister Lu's talent is far above hers. If she can do it, junior sister Lu can naturally do it too. Senior sister Lan. Lu Qingran shook her head and said gently, "You can't say that. If junior sister Meng hadn't discovered that you were injured by the divine devouring vine, I wouldn't have thought of a way to cure you so quickly. So junior sister Meng still deserves the most credit for this matter." She sighed softly. "I really shouldn't have doubted junior sister like that just now, but I really can't accept others talking about master like that." "What?" Lan Zhuxian disagreed. "If she hadn't insisted on finding the 5 elements green crane, and affected your train of thought, you might have thought of a way to cure us long ago. We wouldn't have to worry for so long." Her voice became louder and louder, and in the end, it sounded like she was shouting with all her might. Qin Xiaoma looked at her coldly. "Lower your voice." Lan Zhuxuan's face turned pale. She had been taught a lesson by Qin Xiaoma twice, so she was a bit scared of him. She subconsciously moved closer to Lu Qingran and the Cool Breeze Valley master. Then, she glared at Qin Xiaoma and said loudly, I heard from junior sister Lu that you encountered a problem during your cultivation. But why do you have to ask Ming-Chi to cure you? She's just a chi refinement cultivator, and her cultivation isn't as good as mine. She's only been in the sect for half a year. She just likes to scare people. Our junior sister Lu's medical talent is far better than hers. If you ask her to take a look at you, you might recover faster. Lu Qingran blushed. She quickly glanced at Qin Xioma and carefully pulled Lan Zhuxuan's sleeve. Senior sister Lan, don't say that. Junior sister Meng is also very powerful. How powerful? I heard from junior brother that the 3 disciples she treated in the Burning Sky Palace are still soaking in stinking blood. Lan Zhuxian sneered. We're still better off. We don't need to endure that kind of pain. Hey. Lan Zhuxian looked at Qin Xioma again. Are you really not going to ask our junior sister Lu to give it a try? Be careful not to be fooled by Meng-Chi. She's very good at putting on airs. Maybe your problem isn't serious at all. With a light buzz sound, Qin Xiuma's life-bound sword appeared in the air beside him. He didn't even say anything, and his sword pierced through the air. The Cool Breeze Valley disciples only saw a silver light flash through the air. Fellow Taoist, please have mercy. The Cool Breeze Valley master suddenly made a move, and directly threw a magic tool into the air. With a clang sound, the magic tool was cut in half and fell to the ground. But because of this, Qin Xiuma's sword was still a bit crooked, and it swept past the top of Lan Zhuxuan's head. Ah! Lan Zhuxian almost fainted from fright. She really didn't expect that this handsome man in black, who looked like a fiend, would actually make a move. He didn't show any mercy in front of their sect master. A piece of hair on Lan Zhuxuan's head that had been cut off slowly floated down from the air. The sword returned to Qin Xiuma's side and floated in the air. The tip of the sword was even colder than his gaze. Just like that, it coldly pointed at the Cool Breeze Valley disciples. Lan Zhuxian shrunk her neck in fright and hid behind the sect master. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master looked at her magic tool that had been cut in half with heartache. But she couldn't not save her disciple when she was in trouble. Chu Tianfeng sneered, and looked at them with a smile that wasn't a smile. Even Su Junmo was a bit surprised. His cultivation was above Qin Xiuma's, and he could see that the other party really wanted to kill them just now. Only Lu Qing ran. She gently bit her lower lip and took a step forward without fear. Fellow Taoist, that day at the cold lake, I also checked your body. If you don't mind, why don't you let me have a try? I mind. Qin Xiuma indifferently interrupted Lu Qingran's words. There's no need. Lu Qingran gently bit her lower lip, and her eyes reddened. Qin Xiuma didn't even look at her. He turned around and walked towards the tent where Meng-Chi was resting. Chu Tianfeng hurriedly followed him. Now only Su Junmo stayed where he was. The 2 brothers behind him put their arms around Qin Xiuma's shoulders, and laughed in a low voice that only the 2 of them could hear. That guy seems to be infatuated with Lu Qingran. Heh, that's true. Chu Tianfeng tilted his head slightly and quickly looked back at Su Junmo. Later on, she got along very well with him. Do you still remember? From you to him. You don't even need to change the way you address him. Brother Mo. Qin Xiuma. He flew into a rage and thrust his sword at Chu Tianfeng with a backhand thrust. Chu Tianfeng knew that he wouldn't really do anything to him, so he blocked it out of courtesy. Should we remind him? He asked again in a low voice. He won't believe it. Qin Xiuma said. Both of them could hear a bit of schadenfreude in each other's tone. Su Junmo was quite strong, but in front of that person, he was still far from enough. I saw him shamelessly pestering you. I thought he also remembered something. It seems that he has nothing to do with Meng-Chi. Chu Tianfeng said. Then we don't need to worry about him. Qin Xiuma nodded. The 2 of them quickly exchanged opinions and simply stood side by side outside Meng-Chi's tent. With the deterrence of Qin Xiuma's sword, the disciples of Cool Breeze Valley became much more obedient. They still gathered in 2s and 3s, whispering about something. In the end, no one dared to disturb Meng-Chi again. Meng-Chi directly slept all the way until the next morning. She opened her eyes and felt refreshed. The tiredness from the past few days was swept away. The tent was quiet. Little Chi was still leaning on her arm, its fluffy head pressed against her. It breathed deeply and slept soundly. Mengqi opened her eyes and lay on the bed for a while. She took a deep breath and carefully turned over to sit up. She didn't want to wake little Qi up, but who knew that as soon as she moved, little white tiger opened its eyes and looked at her. Sleep a little longer. Mengqi rubbed its head. She conjured a spell to summon clean water and quickly washed up. Then she opened the tent and walked out. Outside the tent, the disciples of Burning Sky Palace had already packed up and were ready to leave. The unused body and blood of the 5 elements green crane were also put into Chu Tianfeng's storage bag. After what happened yesterday, the disciples of Cool Breeze Valley didn't talk to Burning Sky Palace anymore. Everyone knew that Elder Sun Yan was angry anyway, so Cool Breeze Valley probably couldn't join Burning Sky Palace and enjoy the protection of a large sect. Some disciples still felt that it was a pity. After all, they had the backing of a sect that could be ranked in the top 10 in the east border, which was definitely better than Cool Breeze Valley. After Lan Zhuxian was cured by Lu Qingran, she completely stood on her side. Since being threatened by Qin Xioma yesterday, she had been sparing no effort to preach to the disciples of Cool Breeze Valley. They had an extremely talented cultivator like Lu Qingran, so Cool Breeze Valley would be revived sooner or later. They didn't need to rely on others' charity and look at others' eyes. Everyone thought it was right. The injuries that Mengqi, whom Burning Sky Palace's elders and young palace master admired, could be cured by their junior sister Lu after a few days of pondering. In terms of talent, she was definitely better than Mengqi. With her, why would Cool Breeze Valley worry about not prospering? So when Mengqi had rested enough and walked out of the tent, everyone in Cool Breeze Valley looked at her as if they were looking at a traitor, full of hostility. Mengqi didn't care. Her gaze swept over the injured disciples. Their faces looked a lot rosier, and there were smiles on their faces. It seemed that they were fine. After returning to Cool Breeze Valley today, we will go to Burning City. Chu Tianfeng walked to her side. Come with us. No need. Mengqi shook her head. She was preparing to leave Cool Breeze Valley. She had thought of spending money to ask Burning Sky Palace to take her to Burning City. After all, it was the closest city to the west border. No matter what she saw in the light screen that Chu Tianfeng showed her, she was still willing to believe in Shizhuan. She believed that he was just as he said, from a hidden sect in the west border. You're not going to Burning City? Chu Tianfeng asked immediately. I'm going. Mengqi's gaze passed him and landed on Qin Xioma, who was not far behind him. She explained. Qin Xioma owes me spirit stones, so I hired him to escort me to Burning City. Damn. Chu Tianfeng instantly turned around and glared fiercely at Qin Xioma. At this time, he had completely forgotten that they had agreed to be allies and unite to deal with that terrifying guy. All he wanted to do was to get rid of this despicable guy. Why didn't he think of that? Chu Tianfeng was extremely annoyed. Young Palace Master Chu. Mengqi didn't forget to remind him. You haven't paid the spirit stones to treat your Burning Sky Palace disciples. I don't have the money either. Chu Tianfeng almost squeezed these words out from between his teeth. Oh. Mengqi nodded. Then I'll go find them. Wait. Chu Tianfeng hurriedly stopped her. They're just ordinary disciples of Burning Sky Palace. They're very poor. Mengqi. How about this? Chu Tianfeng's mind was spinning fast at this time. You'll go with us. This journey to Burning City is extremely dangerous. Mengqi. Was Chu Tianfeng bullying her for being insensible? She had never been to Burning City in this life, but she had been there in her previous life. There were transportation arrays between all the major cities. The 10-odd days of travel from Qingfeng Town to Burning City was indeed very dangerous for a Qi refinement cultivator. With Qin Xioma, a cultivator who had recovered to the 3rd or 4th level of Golden Core, by her side, Mengqi felt that it was completely enough. I want spirit stones. Mengqi insisted. She was preparing to activate the array to help her cultivate. The spirit stones were like flowing water. I don't have money. Chu Tianfeng was also very insistent. Mengqi looked at him deeply. I'll go find Elder Sun Yan. Mengqi. Chu Tianfeng could not afford to lose face like this. He hurriedly pulled Mengqi again. He knew that she would really do it. After all, she had already asked for money once and was very familiar with it. I'll give. Chu Tianfeng took out the spirit stones that they had agreed on previously from his storage bag and handed them to Meng Qi. Bikesh. Cece, thank you, young palace master Chu. Meng Qi cupped her hands at him and turned to leave. Qin Xiaoma laughed proudly. He did not care about the extremely ugly expression on Chu Tianfeng's face and quickly followed Meng Qi. I'm going to Qingfeng town first, Meng Qi said to him. Then I'll go back to Qingfeng Valley. She glanced at Qin Xiaoma. To completely heal your injury, I still need some special medicine. I've already asked someone to buy it, but I may not be able to get it for the time being. There's no rush. Qin Xiaoma said leisurely, take your time. Anyway, I still owe you so much. He slightly dragged out his voice. Spirit stones, I'm only at the 3rd or 4th stage of the Golden Core realm now. I'm very cheap. I won't be able to pay you back in a short time. There's no need to rush. Meng Qi. She never knew that when a person said that he was very cheap, he could actually show such a slightly proud expression. Meng Qi shook her head, too lazy to think about these two strange people. Anyway, there was only spirit stones between them. She returned to her tent. Little Qi had already returned to the beast house and had been put into Meng Qi's bracelet storage bag. Qin Xiaoma stood guard at the door, watching as Meng Qi took out a paper crane from the storage bag. I only have this flying talisman, she explained. What about you? Oh, Qin Xiaoma said. This thing can become bigger, it can sit 2 people. Jindan Xiuzhe could actually already fly on their swords. But he was only a half-baked Jindan Xiuzhe right now. It was okay to move for a short time, but if he really used his Ling energy to fly on his sword back to Qingfeng Valley, it probably would not be good. Meng Qi nodded. Then let's go. As she spoke, she put the paper crane in the air and embedded a 2nd-grade spirit stone in the head of the paper crane. The paper crane instantly became longer than a person. Meng Qi sat on it, and Qin Xiaoma also sat on the paper crane without any courtesy. Let's go to Qingfeng town first. She also no longer stayed with the disciples of Qingfeng Valley. Ever since she made up her mind to leave the sect, these people's thoughts could no longer affect her. The paper crane did not fly fast, but it was still better than Elder Lu's paper boat that could accommodate many people when she first came. Meng Qi used 3 2nd-grade spirit stones and finally returned to Qingfeng town that afternoon. She asked Qin Xiaoma to wait for her in the tea house in Qingfeng town. And she went to the Sky Beyond Sky post station to get the formation materials she bought. Then she went to the Cloud Immortal Pavilion and bought a storage bag with more space. Her original bracelet storage bag was not enough for her, so she transferred everything inside, including the beast house, into the new storage bag. After doing these things, Meng Qi returned to the tea house and called Qin Xiaoma. She did not use the paper crane, but walked towards Qingfeng Valley. Meng Qi had been in Qingfeng Valley for more than half a year. Even if she counted her previous life, she had only been in the sect for more than a year. It was impossible to say that she had no feelings at all. Meng Qi was silent. She walked along the mountain path that she had walked countless times in her previous life, and walked step by step towards the peak of Qingfeng Valley. You can't bear to leave? Qin Xiaoma seemed to have guessed her thoughts. He followed in silence all the way, and suddenly asked, why? People are not plants, Meng Qi said. Qingfeng Valley took me into the sect to become a cultivator. Here I had the most ignorant time. Ha! Qin Xiaoma sneered. He straightened his back and looked back to the south. Do you know why I appeared at the bottom of the cold lake? He said. Meng Qi did not speak. She was not good at lying, but in fact she knew about this. Not only did she know that Qin Xiaoma was betrayed by his close friend, but she also knew how he later took revenge on his close friend. The little demon lord's cruel and cold reputation had also spread throughout the southern land. I was betrayed by my close friend and was injured by him during the tribulation. I went mad and almost died. Qin Xiaoma reached out and stroked his arm. His close friend's first strike had been here. The wound had already been treated by Meng Qi, and there was not even a trace left behind. But that bone-deep pain and coldness was something that he could never forget. Later, the indifference of the sect, Shizuan's method of raising disciples like raising insects, and the lover who loved him wholeheartedly moved on. And in the end, when everyone felt that he was hopeless and gave up on him, that slender figure, still dressed in a green robe, and carrying a faint medicinal fragrance, hurried over. Mengqi. Qin Xioma smiled. Remember one thing. He turned to look at Mengqi. In the future, if someone betrays you and wrongly accuses you, don't waste words, just kill them. He paused and then slowly said, I know you can do it. As long as you don't always have a soft heart. As he spoke, he took a step closer to her. The mountain wind blew Qin Xioma's black robe, making it flutter. He looked into Mengqi's eyes and said in a low voice, word by word, including me. If I betray you and hurt you, you can just kill me with a single slash. Junior sister Mengqi. Junior sister Mengqi. On the mountain path, a few anxious calls came from afar, breaking the strange silence between Mengqi and Qin Xioma. Two Cool Breeze Valley disciples in green robes quickly ran along the mountain path. When they saw Mengqi, it was as if they had found a life-saving straw, and they hurriedly rushed towards her. Junior sister Mengqi, I finally found you. The disciple panted. Hurry back and take a look. The fellow disciple who was injured by the divine devouring vine is now rolling on the ground in pain. It looks very, very scary. Chapter 39. As the Cool Breeze Valley disciple spoke, he hurriedly ran to Mengqi's side and reached out to grab her arm. Mengqi dodged his outstretched hand and asked calmly, what happened? The Cool Breeze Valley disciple subconsciously frowned when he saw her calmly avoiding him. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer than before. Junior sister Mengqi also knows about the fellow disciples who were injured by the divine devouring vines. They were clearly fine before, but I don't know why junior sister Lan Zhuxian was the first to have problems after returning to the sect. The Cool Breeze Valley disciple looked at Mengqi and deliberately emphasized the words, Lan Zhuxian. He stared at Mengqi without blinking, as if he wanted to see something different from her face. And then, Mengqi asked calmly. She continued to walk toward the sect and asked the disciple, apart from rolling on the ground in pain, what else happened? What else happened? The Cool Breeze Valley disciple was stunned. Then the sect master and the elders went to check on them. Elder Lu sent us to look for junior sister Mengqi separately. Mengqi. She quickened her pace. Qin Xioma also immediately followed. He stood quietly on Mengqi's right and separated her from the Cool Breeze Valley disciple. He smiled, and a hint of mockery flashed in his eyes. What about the Burning Sky Palace disciples who were also injured by the divine devouring vines? The Cool Breeze Valley disciple was stunned again. He peeked at Mengqi from Qin Xioma and stuttered, They seem to be fine. Qin Xioma laughed happily. The Cool Breeze Valley disciple was dissatisfied, but he also knew that this was an expert that even the sect master could not do anything about. He was definitely not his match. He could only shut his mouth obediently and walk to the far right. You really want to care about their lives? Qin Xioma lazily glanced at the silent disciple and said, Have you forgotten how they treated you before? As he spoke, he intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the Cool Breeze Valley disciple. They don't trust you, they doubt you, they slander you, they act high and mighty in front of you, he said. Let's go back and see them rolling on the ground. The Cool Breeze Valley disciple had just opened his mouth when Qin Xioma's cold gaze swept over him. He was so scared that he quickly shut his mouth and didn't dare to say anything else. However, there was a voice in the bottom of her heart telling her that this person was right. All the disciples of Cool Breeze Valley had seen clearly how they had treated Mengqi. They really distrusted her and doubted her. Especially Lan Zhuxian. She was the one who clamored the loudest. Junior sister Meng. He opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Let's go back first, Mengqi said calmly. They weren't far from where Cool Breeze Valley was. The three sped up and quickly returned to the sect. Before they entered the main hall, Mengqi heard wails coming from inside. The wails were heart-wrenching and seemed to be of both males and females. It sounded extremely terrifying. Cool Breeze Valley was a medical sect, and all of their disciples cultivated. This kind of wail didn't seem like something a Xiuzha would make. Mengqi glanced at the disciple. The other carefully explained. We were all gathered in the main hall just now to discuss the gains and losses of participating in this mission. And whether or not to accept the recruitment of Burning Sky Palace. He paused, his voice becoming lower and lower. Then the Shimi, Shixiang, and Shitty that were injured before suddenly shouted and fell to the ground. And became like this. Mengqi nodded and walked side by side with Qin Xioma into the main hall of Cool Breeze Valley. There were at least 50 or 60 people gathered in the main hall. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master, Lu Qingran, Elder Lu, and Elder Yen were all there. Even Sun Yan had rushed over after hearing the news. At this moment, they were standing in a corner of the main hall, looking at the chaotic scene in front of them helplessly. Chu Tianfeng was standing beside Sun Yan. When he saw Mengqi enter, his eyes lit up, and he immediately walked toward them. Shimi, Mengqi is back. It was unknown who shouted, but the hall suddenly became quiet. Except for the few disciples who couldn't bear the pain, and were rolling on the ground. Almost everyone looked in the direction of Mengqi, who was at the entrance of the main hall. Mengqi. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master heaved a sigh of relief. She straightened her body and anxiously called out to Mengqi. Quickly come and take a look. Their divine devouring vines injuries are acting up. Mengqi frowned. In the main hall of Cool Breeze Valley, the originally faint medicinal fragrance had been replaced by the sweet fragrance of white peaches. Mengqi walked toward the few injured disciples. The closer he got, the stronger the sweet fragrance became. Before he even got close, the fragrance was so strong that it was intoxicating. Shimi, Mengqi. Lu Qingran's eyes were red. She had probably just cried. Her long eyelashes were wet with tears, and the tip of her delicate nose was red. She looked pitiful and cute. Lu Qingran had just opened her mouth when tears rolled down her cheeks like pearls from a broken necklace. It's all my fault. Lu Qingran's tears fell quickly. I harmed them. It's all my fault. I'm not good enough, but I still wanted to show off. Boo. Master, it's all my fault. I harmed them. Qingran. The sect master sighed. This is not your fault. Don't cry. That's right, Shimi Lu. This is not your fault. Don't blame yourself too much. Another sect master's personal disciple also comforted Lu Qingran in a soft voice. You also wanted to save them. No one would have thought that things would turn out like this. That's right, Shimi Lu. Don't cry. Another disciple looked at the injured disciples who were in so much pain that they no longer had the strength to roll around, and were lying helplessly on the ground. They probably won't blame you. But, Lu Qingran's eyes were hazy with tears. But if it wasn't for me, they would be fine now. It's not your fault, Shimi Lu. Shimi Lu, don't be sad. Shimi Meng will save them. That's right. Shimi Meng will definitely have a way. That's right. Shimi Meng will cure them. Shimi Mengqi. As if being reminded, Lu Qingran reached out and grabbed Mengqi's arm. I beg you, you must save them. Mengqi raised her eyebrows and looked down at Lu Qingran's hand on her arm. She raised her head again, and looked at Lu Qingran, who was crying like a pear blossom. A beauty's tears were the most heartbreaking. Those disciples who were lying on the ground in so much pain that they wanted to die were all because of Lu Qingran. They were the ones who were in pain. Mengqi was the innocent one who was wronged. But now, those Cool Breeze Valley disciples were still comforting Lu Qingran. Mengqi tilted her head slightly. She suddenly understood a little why she was always so unlucky in her previous life. Shimi Mengqi, don't delay anymore. Hurry up and save them. At this time, another Cool Breeze Valley disciple urged. That's right. Hurry up and save them. Where did you run off to? We looked everywhere in the sect for you, but couldn't find you. Another disciple said. Mengqi raised her eyebrows and the corners of her lips curled up. She pulled her arm back from Lu Qingran's hand, and took a step back. I can save them. She threw a bamboo slip at Lu Qingran. One disciple costs 500 8th grade spirit stones. Shimi Lu, you can write the IOU first. The Cool Breeze Valley main hall suddenly became incomparably quiet. Even the sect master and Elder Lu looked at Mengqi in astonishment. The disciples in the main hall looked at her like they were looking at a monster. Lu Qingran's eyes were full of disbelief as she looked at her with wide eyes in surprise. 500 8th grade spirit stones for one person. Then these people added up. Lu Qingran looked blankly at the injured Cool Breeze Valley disciples lying in the main hall. 1, 2, 3. There were a total of 7 people. That was 3 9th grade spirit stones and 500 8th grade spirit stones. All the Cool Breeze Valley disciples present sucked in a breath of cold air. They probably didn't even have a fraction of their total assets. But why was it so expensive? Previously at the camp, Shimi Meng also said that she needed to collect money to save people. But she clearly didn't need that much. And at that time, didn't she only say that she needed to collect money from male disciples? 9th grade spirit stones. Not to mention Lu Qingran, this Juji cultivator. Even the Cool Breeze Valley sect master might not be able to take out that many spirit stones. Meng Qi didn't care about everyone's reactions, and turned to squat down. She took out a porcelain bottle from her storage bag, and quickly stuffed 2 pills into the mouths of each injured disciple. The pills had the effect of relieving pain. Once it entered their mouths, those disciples who had no strength and were groaning in pain slowly calmed down. The main hall became even quieter. Lu Qingran held the bamboo slip that Meng Qi threw to her, and turned to look blankly at her Shizhuan. Shizhuan. After a long while, she called out with red eyes and grievance. Meng Qi. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master finally came back to her senses. She coughed lightly and awkwardly called out to Meng Qi. Here. Meng Qi stood and turned around, responding crisply. Junior Sister Meng. Another direct disciple of the sect master saw that his Shizhuan was in a difficult position, and carefully looked at Meng Qi. You must be joking with us, right? Ha ha. No. Meng Qi smiled. I'm not joking. Junior Sister Meng. That disciple looked at the sect master, and then at Meng Qi. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master's expression wasn't very good. That disciple could only brace himself, and continue to persuade Meng Qi. Don't take what happened before to heart. They didn't do it on purpose. At the time, everyone was injured and worried. They didn't suspect you or target you on purpose. Meng Qi nodded, indicating that she accepted. We're all from the same sect. Senior sister's words are wrong. Meng Qi calmly interrupted her. Earlier, it was Elder Lu who summoned us to support our fellow disciples who went out to kill demons. When I went, my fellow disciples were injured. If I could save them, of course I would. Because I treated you all. Her clear and cold gaze swept across the Cool Breeze Valley disciples in the main hall. As fellow disciples, I can understand that senior sister Lan Zhuxian doesn't trust me. After all, as a junior sister, my cultivation level is low and I've only been in the sect for a short time. It's understandable that senior sister doesn't trust me. Meng Qi continued. Her expression was calm, and her figure looked so thin and slender. But when she spoke, no disciple dared to interrupt her. It's natural for senior sister Lu to blame me for Shizhuan. Meng Qi reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Senior sister and senior brothers stand on senior sister Lu's side, and accuse me of being a traitor of the Cool Breeze Valley. It's also your freedom. Fontuan was reading. Junior sister Meng Qi. That disciple hurriedly said. You misunderstood. At that time, everyone was really too worried, so maybe their tone was a little too harsh. You know junior sister Lan Zhuxuan's temper. She's like this. She speaks very straightforwardly and is a little narrow-minded. Now that she's injured, you should be more magnanimous and not argue with senior sister Lan. Meng Qi smiled. Senior sister Lan has a temper, but can't I have a temper? That disciple opened his mouth and wanted to speak, but found that he didn't know what to say. Well said. In the quiet main hall, a few crisp applause suddenly sounded. The Cool Breeze Valley disciples glared at the people who were clapping. The black-clothed youth, Chu Tianfeng, didn't care at all. Under everyone's gaze, he walked to Meng Qi's side. Everyone can have their own temper. You're right. Chu Tianfeng tilted his head and glanced at the Cool Breeze Valley disciples. I just wanted to remind you that when you're needed, you're a fellow disciple. When you're not needed, you're treated as a traitor. It's fine to not save such a person. Heavens! Young Palace Master Chu. Lu Qingran's face was pale. She stared blankly at Chu Tianfeng. First it was Sun Yan, and now it was Chu Tianfeng. And there was also Qin Xiaoma. She didn't understand why these people were willing to stand on Meng Qi's side. Previously, when I wanted to save people, senior sister Lu said she could do it, but senior sister Lan said she didn't need me. Meng Qi continued. Her voice was as cold as her gaze. It was very pleasing to the ear, like a clear mountain stream with broken jade and flowing pearls. We've already hunted the 5 elements green crane, so what happened next would be much easier. But senior sister Lu made the situation very complicated. Shouldn't she bear the consequences of things becoming like this? Lu Qingran's palm-sized face instantly turned deathly pale. She opened her mouth and murmured, I'm not. I also want to save them. Qin Xiaoma, who had never left Meng Qi's side, sneered. Do you think that you can do it, and thinking that you want to be the same thing? What you actually did was almost kill them. Write it and I owe you. Qin Xiaoma raised his chin. Or do you intend to watch these fellow disciples who trusted you painfully become flower pots for the divine devouring vines, because of your irresponsibility and blind confidence? F***ck, this guy is too ruthless. Chu Tianfeng couldn't help but look at Qin Xiaoma. Every word of his was simply heart-wrenching. Only he could say something like becoming a flower pot for the divine devouring vines. Lu Qingran's face turned even paler. She stared at Qin Xiaoma in a daze, then looked at Meng Qi. Of course, you can also ignore their lives. Anyway, as the sect leader's beloved disciple, it's very difficult for you to be the one injured. At the camp, you clearly weren't sure if you could cure them, but you insisted on questioning Meng Qi at that time, and stopping Meng Qi from treating them. Wasn't it because you were the one injured by the divine devouring vines and would become a flower pot for nourishment if you weren't careful? Qin Xiaoma looked at the surrounding Cool Breeze Valley disciples lazily and said, his title of Little Demon Lord was not an undeserved reputation. After experiencing the betrayal of his close friend and the abandonment of his sect, Qin Xiaoma was heartless and extreme in his actions. But often, the tip of his sword was pointed at everyone's most fatal spot. Chu Tianfeng almost laughed out loud. King Flower Pot. Ruthless. Really too ruthless. As soon as Qin Xiaoma said these words, the expressions of the Cool Breeze Valley disciples, who were standing on Lu Qingran's side and helping her, all changed. His words not only pierced Lu Qingran's heart. Every word and sentence pierced into the hearts of these disciples. That's right. As the sect leader's most valued disciple, Lu Qingran had always been well protected. Even if this happened, it was very difficult for her to be the one injured. But it was different for them. The disciples looked at their fellow disciples who were lying on the ground, and didn't know if they could survive. They were lucky this time. Maybe next time, the ones lying on the ground would be them. They thought that they might become nourishment for the divine devouring vines, and become a flower pot for them. Those disciples couldn't help but shiver. Chu Tianfeng held back his laughter, and stood beside Qin Xiaoma with a cold face. The two of them had a tacit understanding, and protected Meng Qi behind them. Lu Qingran stood in a daze for a moment, and turned to look at her master. Also she was suddenly shocked. Why did the gazes of those fellow disciples become so strange? Lu Qingran held the bamboo slip and stood in a daze for a while. Until finally a Cool Breeze Valley disciple couldn't hold it in any longer as he opened his mouth and said softly, I think he's right. That day junior sister Meng Qi really wanted to save her, but junior sister Lu refused to let her save her and senior sister Lan also refused to let junior sister Meng save her. In the end, junior sister Meng had no choice but to save the Burning Sky Palace disciples. Is senior sister Lan stupid? Why didn't she let them save them? Junior sister Meng could even cure young Palace Master Chu. Maybe junior sister Lu and senior sister Lan said something in advance. Another disciple whispered, I also think it's quite strange. Ah, I heard that senior sister Lu likes young Palace Master Chu. Could it be that she's jealous and purposely wants to embarrass junior sister Meng? If that's the case, then it's too much. Does she really not care about the lives of us ordinary disciples? She already said it. Anyway, she's not the one who changed the flower pot. The whispers grew louder and louder. Qin Xioma had just called it a flower pot, which was really too stimulating for everyone. Even if the sect master was here, they couldn't control themselves. No one wanted to be a sacrifice, especially a sacrifice with such a tragic end. Junior sister Lu. Lan Zhuxian, who was lying on the ground, suddenly raised her upper body with all her might. She stared at Lu Qingran with her eyes wide open, and her voice was hoarse with unspeakable resentment. You lied to me. You clearly said that you found a way to cure me. I trusted you so much, but you lied to me. I didn't lie to you. Lu Qingran's face instantly became even paler. It's true, senior sister Lan. I didn't lie to you. Believe me. You lied to me. You liar. You complained to me that you didn't know what Meng Qi did to young Palace Master Chu, and he ignored you. You're so cruel. You actually want to sacrifice so many of us just to spite Meng Qi. Lan Zhuxian screamed hoarsely. She didn't want to experience the terrifying feeling of her internal organs being twisted into a ball, and it was so painful that even breathing was wrong. Lan Zhuxian turned around and tried to crawl toward Meng Qi. Junior sister Meng. She hugged Meng Qi's leg and looked up at her desperately. Please save me. I apologize to you and kowtow to you. Please forgive your senior sister. I beg you, please save me. Meng Qi. Qin Xioma asked softly. Are the divine devouring vines still in their bodies? Or can they turn into flower pots? Lan Zhuxian's breathing became even more rapid. She hugged Meng Qi in horror, and used all her strength to nod her head on the ground. Junior sister. A teardrop fell from the corner of Lan Zhuxian's eye. Please save me. I won't dare to go against you in the future. Please forgive me and save me. Junior sister Lu. A disciple quickly walked out of the crowd and bent over to help his injured good friend. He looked up, his eyes almost spitting fire. It's already like this. Are you still not willing to do something small to make up for your mistakes? Or do you not care about the life and death of your fellow disciples at all? Chu Tianfeng curled his lips. He looked warily at Lu Qingran, who was desperately trying to explain, it wasn't me, with tears flowing down her face. Qin Xioma turned around and looked over. The two of them quickly exchanged a look. The Burning Heaven Palace came here to help Cool Breeze Valley survive this crisis. Originally, the Burning Heaven Palace had already decided to take Cool Breeze Valley under their wing. Chu Tianfeng suddenly said. However, everyone saw what happened during this period. It made me and Elder Sun Yin very disappointed. The Cool Breeze Valley Master's face paled. She had already guessed what Chu Tianfeng was going to do, but she couldn't stop him at all. Not to mention that Chu Tianfeng's cultivation was only 2 or 3 small realms lower than hers, the Burning Heaven Palace behind him, and the nascent soul Elder Sun Yin weren't people she could deal with. Therefore, even though she knew what the other party was going to say, the Cool Breeze Valley Master could only watch as Chu Tianfeng continued to speak. However, if the Cool Breeze Valley disciples are willing to submit to the Burning Heaven Palace, we will make the appropriate arrangements for everyone. I'm willing. I want to join the Burning Heaven Palace. Bah. I've had enough of this place. I announce that I'm leaving Cool Breeze Valley. Please take me in, young Palace Master Chu. The hall was instantly thrown into chaos. Meng Qi looked at the scene in front of him in a daze. Cool Breeze Valley was a small sect, and had never been truly glorious. However, the sect had been established for hundreds of years, almost 1,000 years. Did it really fall apart overnight? Did the people scatter after the tree fell? After a while, Meng Qi lowered his eyelids and took out a small jade pendant from his storage bag. He held it with both hands and respectfully presented it to the Cool Breeze Valley Master. This disciple will heal these injured senior brothers and sisters. From now on, they are no longer disciples of Cool Breeze Valley. The Cool Breeze Valley Master pursed her lips tightly. She tightened her jaw and took the small jade pendant from Meng Qi's hands. The sect master looked at Meng Qi's elegant and serious face. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she just let out a long sigh. She waved her hand and said hoarsely, "Thank you, Meng. Fellow Taoist Meng." In the hall, people kept taking out their sect's jade pendants and throwing them on the ground. She was powerless to stop it, and she couldn't stop it. Meng Qi nodded at her. then turned and walked toward the injured disciples. There was still a lot of noise behind her, but it didn't seem to affect her. Mengqi bent down and patiently checked the injured disciples' bodies one by one. The Cool Breeze Valley Master looked at this scene quietly. Elder Sun Yan's words that day seemed to ring in her ears again. So, did I really do something wrong? Is the Cool Breeze Valley really going to be destroyed in my hands just like that? Mengqi quickly finished checking the last disciple. She stood up hesitantly, frowning slightly. The situation was more complicated than she had imagined. Not only were the divine devouring vine sprouts in these disciples' bodies not removed, but they also had a strange power. What is this? Mengqi wanted to turn around and ask Lu Qingran how she had treated these disciples that day. However, only the angry Cool Breeze Valley disciples were left in the hall. The sect master stood rooted to the ground in a daze, while Lu Qingran disappeared. Mengqi looked around. Qin Xiaoma walked to her side. Is it very troublesome? A little. Mengqi nodded. Don't worry, Qin Xiaoma said as he handed her a bamboo slip. Lu Qingran, I owe you. Keep it well. Mengqi. You really want to save them? He lowered his head and looked at those disciples. They're just a group of foundation establishment cultivators. Their talents are mediocre. He grinned. Why bother? Chapter 40. As Qin Xiaoma spoke, he glanced meaningfully at Lan Zhuxian, who was lying on the ground. He continued nonchalantly, especially her. How did she treat you just now? So what if she's dead? His voice was not soft, and his tone was indifferent as if he was talking about the good weather today. In the main hall of Cool Breeze Valley, the disciples standing closer to him could hear him clearly, especially those disciples who were injured by the divine devouring vines and lying on the ground. When they heard that, they all looked up at Mengqi in a panic. Lan Zhuxian, who was the closest to him, was trembling all over. Junior sister Mengqi. She trembled and grabbed the corner of Mengqi's robe tightly. It was all my fault just now. Please forgive me. Lan Zhuxian was really scared. When her injuries relapsed just now, she felt as if her organs were being tightened by countless thin ropes. She was in so much pain that her scalp went numb. She felt as if she was breathing in tiny blades that were cutting every inch of her flesh and blood. The intense pain completely exceeded Lan Zhuxian's imagination. She felt that if she lived for another moment, she would be driven crazy by the pain. Even though the sect master and Elder Lu gave her medicine to suppress the terrible pain, she still felt uncomfortable all over. It was as if the tightened rope had loosened slightly and was no longer forcefully sinking into her flesh and blood. However, when she became slightly more conscious, the pain became even more obvious. It came like a tidal wave. No one knew if they would fall into the terrifying 18 levels of hell in the next moment. Only when Mengqi gave them 2 more pills did they manage to suppress the pain to a tolerable level. The more conscious Lan Zhuxian was now, the more afraid she was of falling into that terrible and overwhelming pain again. She trembled and grabbed the corner of Mengqi's robe tightly. She begged in a hoarse voice, "Junior sister Mengqi, please save us. I'm so sorry. You can hit me or scold me. Save us. Junior sister Mengqi, please." Those injured disciples all looked at Mengqi and begged. "Save us. Junior sister Meng, we'll do anything for you in the future. Please save us. Please, junior sister Mengqi." The sounds of pleading rose and fell. The agitated Cool Breeze Valley disciples who wanted to withdraw from the sect all quieted down. Everyone looked at Mengqi nervously. They weren't the ones who were injured, but they could empathize with them. If it weren't for their good luck, they might have been the ones lying on the ground begging for death. Everyone became nervous. Qin Xiaoma's lips curled up. However, everyone's attention in the hall was drawn to Mengqi because of his words. No one saw the faint smile that flashed through his eyes. "Mengqi, they don't believe you. They insult you, scold you, and even treat you as a traitor." Qin Xiaoma said lazily. "Do you really want to repay evil with good? Do you really want to waste time and energy saving them?" His voice was low, and it clearly reached the ears of every Cool Breeze Valley disciple in the hall. Every word Qin Xiaoma said was to remind these people how they treated Mengqi before. Every time he reminded them, they would realize more clearly how good it was that Meng Qi was still willing to save them. Qin Xiuma knew that Meng Qi wouldn't care about these things. This guy was obsessed with medical skills, and his personality was too cold. She didn't know how to say a lot of things herself. Qin Xiuma even felt that Meng Qi was sometimes afraid of these troubles. She didn't enjoy others' gratitude. All her happiness and joy came from curing people, or the satisfaction brought by the improvement of her medical skills. But it didn't matter. He didn't mind being the bad guy and doing these things for her that she was too lazy to care about. If you can save them, then save them. Sure enough, Meng Qi said casually after a moment of silence. All right. Qin Xiuma shrugged. I can only waste a few more days for this group of trash. Qin Xiuma's tone was sharp, and none of the Cool Breeze Valley disciples dared to refute. The other party was a genius cultivator, who successfully formed his gold core at a young age. It was said that if it wasn't for his qi deviation, he would have already reached the peak stage of Jindan, and had one foot in the nascent soul stage. This was something that even the Cool Breeze Valley's sect master couldn't do. Even if he had qi deviation, their sect master was no match for him now. With the power of Qin Xiuma's sword, the sect master could barely deflect it with a magic weapon. No matter how harsh his words were, they didn't dare to say anything in front of absolute power. Even Lan Zhuxuan's small face turned pale, and she silently lowered her head. In comparison, the Cool Breeze Valley disciples instantly felt that Meng Qi was really too good and too kind. Not only did she not care about everyone's rudeness to her before, but she also didn't say anything sarcastic. What she said just now was a temper that any normal person would have. The Cool Breeze Valley disciples asked themselves, if they were in Meng Qi's shoes, they might have come back to see everyone's miserable state, felt satisfied, and then turned to leave. They definitely wouldn't save these people who insulted them. Junior Marshal Sister Meng Qi was actually willing to save people for just a few spirit stones. Really, she was too kind, too good. The Cool Breeze Valley disciples' gazes towards Meng Qi quietly changed. No wonder Elder Yan, the most eccentric and indifferent person in the sect, who didn't even spare a glance for the sect master's beloved disciple Lu Qingran, appreciated her so much. Only Junior Marshal Sister Meng Qi deserved the praise of Elder Yan, who even Elder Sun Yan of Burning Sky Palace respected. Meng Qi didn't find anything wrong with Qin Xiuma's words. The little demon lord in her memory was even more arrogant and ruthless than the current Qin Xiuma. He looked down on the Cool Breeze Valley disciples, treating them like ants. It was only natural. Meng Qi couldn't even be bothered to argue with Qin Xiuma. She directly knelt on one knee and pressed her hand on Lan Zhuxuan's wrist. There was a faint light on the fingertips of her right hand, and it went all the way up her arm. Huh. Meng Qi was stunned. How did Senior Marshal Sister Lu treat you just now? Lan Zhuxian recalled. She said she could directly kill the divine devouring vine, and gave each of us a pill. Then she sealed a spell in our bodies. Junior Marshal Sister Meng. She nervously grabbed Meng Qi's wrist. Is there a problem? Meng Qi pondered. It's a bit like demonic aura. Demonic aura? Lan Zhuxian repeated. The surrounding Cool Breeze Valley disciples also looked at each other in surprise. Demonic aura? Lu Qingran has dealings with fiendish cultivators or demons. Is she trying to kill her fellow disciples? I remember that last time. She and young Palatial Master Chu encountered demons outside. She was fine, but she fainted from fright. However, young Palatial Master Chu was poisoned and injured. Could it be that she already had dealings with demons at that time? Yes. I also heard that the first thing she wanted to do when she woke up was to accuse Junior Marshal Sister Meng of knowing demons. Luckily, young Palatial Master Chu stood on Junior Marshal Sister Meng's side, and proved her innocence. Otherwise, Junior Marshal Sister Meng would have been in trouble. Nonsense. Young Palatial Master Chu was saved by Junior Marshal Sister Meng. Of course, she can tell the difference. Huh. Did anyone see Lu Qingran? Where did she go? Damn it. She couldn't have run away, because she felt guilty, right? Of course. Gosh, we are actually in the same sect as someone who colludes with demons, and the sect master doesn't even realize it. He dotes on her so much. This sect can't be good. I originally thought that I still had feelings for the sect and was hesitating whether to leave or not. But now I don't. Me too. In an instant, many of the disciples who were hesitating whether or not to leave Cool Breeze Valley threw the sect's jade tablet on the ground. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master closed her eyes and could only helplessly watch all of this happen in silence. Although the sect's foundation had been established for nearly 1,000 years, there had never been a powerhouse. But from the first day she became the sect master, she had been cautious and conscientious and had never slacked off. Although she favored her disciple Lu Qingran a bit, she could be considered fair to other disciples. In the sect, she had never used her power to oppress others and almost never punished her disciples. Why? Why was everyone so dissatisfied with her? The sect master stared numbly at the jade tablet on the ground. Cool Breeze Valley was only a small sect, and these disciples' talents were limited. Most of them came for the medical cultivation sect, and didn't have any expectations of cultivating the great Tao or ascending. They just wanted to have a skill to rely on and live peacefully in these 3,000 worlds. But now they couldn't stay any longer? Was it really time for Cool Breeze Valley to disperse? Fellow Taoist. Sun Yan slowly walked to the Cool Breeze Valley sect master's side. Elder Sun. The sect master returned the greeting. I have something to say to fellow Taoist. Sun Yan sighed softly. You're a medical cultivator, so you should know that mercy and kindness should never be indulgence. If a patient doesn't follow a medical cultivator's instructions, and a medical cultivator doesn't care, and just lets them be happy, that's hypocrisy. Sun Yan paused and said, as the sect master, if you don't restrain your disciples and don't punish disciples who deserve to be punished, it's like a medical cultivator not restraining a patient. That's also hypocrisy. Good medicine tastes bitter, but honest advice grates on the ear. The sect doesn't have any restraints, doesn't know reverence, and doesn't follow the great Tao. All day long, it will disperse sooner or later. The Cool Breeze Valley sect master's body shook. This was the second time Sun Yan had said something like this to her. Last time he was full of anger and was very rude. This time his tone was gentle, but it made the Cool Breeze Valley sect master feel even more ashamed. Sun Yan had said all he wanted to say. He cupped his hands towards the sect master. Fellow Taoist, please take care of yourself. This was already all he could do for the sake of Yan Mingfeng and Mingqi. As an elder of the Burning Sky Palace, Sun Yan really didn't care about such a small sect. After saying this, he no longer looked at the sect master, and looked at Mengqi with his hands behind his back. There, Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaoma were guarding Mengqi. The two of them looked at her nervously as she checked Lan Zhuxuan's body again. They hurriedly asked, Demonic Qi, are you sure? I'm not sure. Mengqi shook her head. Because that cultivation art has become weaker and weaker, and it's mixed with the divine devouring vines in their bodies. I can't distinguish it. But this way, it'll be easier to cure them, she said to Chu Tianfeng. Give me the remaining 5 elements green crane. Oh. Chu Tianfeng heard this and slowly took out the 5 elements green crane's huge body from his storage bag. This thing is also something that we helped to kill, right? Yes. Mengqi nodded. I have no objections if you give it to the disciples of the Burning Sky Palace, Chu Tianfeng said leisurely. But if you give it to them, he glanced at the Cool Breeze Valley disciples. I want to collect money. Yes, I want it too. Qin Xiaoma also nodded. Mengqi, Lan Zhuxian, the injured Cool Breeze Valley disciples. The other Cool Breeze Valley disciples in the main hall. Even Sun Yan choked. Who did the young palace master learn this from? Then he looked at Mengqi, who was standing there, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Besides this girl, there was no one else. You do as you please. Mengqi was a big collector of spirit stones, so she couldn't say much. I guess they can't take out many spirit stones. Qin Xiaoma's eyes flashed. Let them be coolies. Let them pick the cold sky grass under the cold pond. Why novel? The disciples shrank back again, but none of them objected. Although the cold pond was bone-chilling, Foundation establishment cultivators could still barely stay down for an hour with the help of Chun Yuan. It would be fine if it was Junior Marshal Sister Meng who spoke, but these two people looked very scary. They were probably very powerful. Being coolies was better than owing spirit stones that they couldn't repay in their lifetime. Mengqi couldn't be bothered with them. She found it troublesome before because there was a strange and powerful spell in these people's bodies causing trouble. Now that the spell was gradually weakening and disappearing, it was easy for her to treat them. After spending about half a day, Mengqi healed the injuries of the Cool Breeze Valley disciples one by one. Qin Xiuma waited for these people to recover, then he really drove them to the cold pond to pick a lot of cold sky grass. Chu Tianfeng didn't let them stay idle either. He asked Elder Lu of Cool Breeze Valley for these people to pick a lot of spirit herbs and spirit flowers from the surroundings. Then he tidied them up and put them away. Mengqi hadn't left Cool Breeze Valley yet. After Elder Yan came back, he went into seclusion at the cold pond. Even if she wanted to leave, she would have to say goodbye to Elder Yan before leaving. On Cool Breeze Valley, many disciples had already left the mountain. Some of them planned to leave with Burning Heaven Palace, and were taken into some of Burning Heaven Palace's subordinate sections. Some went straight down the mountain to go home, planning to live the rest of their lives like this. There were also disciples who had been in the sect for a long time who continued to stay in Cool Breeze Valley. But after this incident, Cool Breeze Valley became much more desolate. In the past, after the disciples finished their morning classes, the sect would be lively. But now, there was often no one to be seen for half a day. On the 5th day after she returned to Cool Breeze Valley, Mengqi finally finished preparing the last material needed for the formation. She set up a protective formation around her room, then closed the doors and windows, and started to draw the formation in the room. This was a new formation that Mengqi's teacher had spent many months to combine several formations into one, and specially designed for her. Drawing the formation required a lot of materials. The small formations and the big ones overlapped and were extremely complicated. Mengqi spent 2 hours and finally drew the formation based on her memory. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and couldn't help but stand outside the formation, tilting her head to admire the entire formation. Now she only wanted to advance from Qi refinement to foundation establishment, and the spirit energy she needed wasn't particularly much. The materials used to draw the formation weren't the best. In the future, as her cultivation level increased, she wanted to use this formation to refine the spirit energy in the spirit stones to advance her own cultivation level. The requirements of the materials needed would become higher and higher. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to withstand and accommodate the impact of the huge amount of spirit energy. Let's begin. Mengqi took out a handful of 8th grade spirit stones from her storage bag and inserted them into the formation with a flick of her finger. The originally dark room gradually became brighter. Little Qi, who was lying lazily on the bed, opened its eyes and looked over in surprise. The little white tiger's ears suddenly pricked up, and it raised its upper body. As calm as it was, its azure blue eyes were instantly filled with surprise that it couldn't hide in time. Wasn't this the star formation of the Sky Demon White Tiger clan? Little Qi suddenly looked up and shot a sharp gaze at the girl whose back was facing it. This Mengqi, who exactly was she? Chapter 41. Little Qi stretched and jumped off the bamboo bed. He slowly walked to the side of the formation. The spirit stones themselves were not bright, but under the activation of the formation, the entire room became slightly bright. 1200 KSW. Net when the 7 brightest spirit stones were connected, they formed the shape of the Big Dipper. Little Qi slowly reached out with his furry paw and lightly pressed on the edge of the formation. He looked like he had come to see what Mengqi was doing out of curiosity. Mengqi glanced at him and ordered, "Be careful, Little Qi, don't touch it." She took a deep breath and slowly stepped into the formation. Abundant spiritual energy instantly enveloped her entire body. The Ling energy contained in 8th grade spirit stones in the 3000 worlds was about the same as the Ling energy in a cultivator who had just broken through and entered the stage of Mahayana. However, the cultivators could not directly use the Ling energy in the spirit stones to cultivate. People had tried in the past. They were disappointed to find that even if they tried to activate the Ling energy in the spirit stones, it would quickly dissipate and could not be absorbed into the body. No one could explain the specific reason. They could only guess that the Ling energy in the spirit stones was of a different origin from the Ling energy that the cultivators needed. The cultivators of the 3,000 worlds relied on breathing to absorb the Ling energy in the surroundings and refine it in their bodies for their own use. The more Ling energy accumulated, the more it changed from quantity to quality. This was a breakthrough in cultivation. People with high cultivation talent could easily turn the Ling energy in the surroundings to their own use. People with low cultivation talent usually worked twice the effort for half the result. Mengqi was not especially stupid, but she could not be said to be talented. She closed her eyes and sat cross-legged in the center of the formation. Mengqi's master had disliked her cultivation progress for being too slow. So he had created the formation so that she could turn the Ling energy in the spirit stones to her own use. In the end, Mengqi had managed to enter the stage of Jindan before her medical skills reached 4th grade. She did not let her cultivation level drag down her medical skills too much. The little white tiger looked at the young girl wrapped in Ling energy. The faint light flashed and caused her skin to appear even whiter. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. His eyes flickered as well, and the Big Dipper, which had been hidden, reappeared in his azure eyes. The stars floated up and down, and there seemed to be thin starlight around them. If one looked closely, they would find that the traces of starlight were very similar to the formation drawn by Mengqi. If one had to point out a difference, the array that Mengqi drew was much cruder. However, the essence was the same. The 7 sparkling spirit stones seemed to reflect the Big Dipper in Little Qi's eyes. He looked at the scene in front of him silently. The Yao Xiu of the Yao world had different cultivation methods from Xiuzha. The cultivation of the 3,000 worlds was completely against the will of the heavens, seizing the Tao of heaven and earth for their own use. Because of this, they walked step by step with great steadiness. The spirit sea in one's body would expand naturally as one's cultivation level increased. The advancement of his cultivation base was also a matter of course. The demonic cultivators, on the other hand, could absorb spiritual qi with every breath they took. Ordinary demon cultivators would also have some kind of star projection on their bodies. With the help of the star projection, they would be able to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Sky Yao usually had star formations on their bodies, and all the spiritual qi in the world could be used by them. What limited their cultivation was usually the growth rate of their spirit sea, which could not keep up with the rate of accumulation of Ling energy. Therefore, many times, the Ling energy that the Yao Xiu absorbed into their bodies was wasted. Because of this, the 3,000 worlds and the Yao world had maintained a delicate balance for tens of thousands of years. There was no overwhelming suppression from any side. Little Qi's gaze gradually became calm, and the Big Dipper star in his eyes disappeared. He looked at the formation in front of him. This formation was still very crude. If it was used for cultivation, it could at most allow Mengqi to break through to Jindan. If she wanted to break through from Jindan to Yuanying, then a more powerful and complete formation was needed. No matter how crude the formation was, Mengqi was using the cultivation method of the Yao Xiu to increase her cultivation. This was a very, very frightening thing. Little Qi's furry front paw slowly rose. He looked at the side of Mengqi's face reflected in the light of the formation. The girl seemed to trust him greatly. She just let him stay by her side with ease, without any intention of guarding against him at all. If the Xiuzha of the 3,000 worlds mastered this kind of formation, how terrifying would it be? Little 7 couldn't be any clearer. That meant that most of the greatest obstacles in their cultivation had been swept away. The large sects of the 3,000 worlds and Wuxia could use the power of the sects to increase the cultivation speed of their top experts by at least 5 times. In the long run, the delicate balance of the 3 worlds would be broken. It had to be said that compared to the Mo Xiu and Mo beings of the Mo territories, Yao Xiu were considered smarter, especially Sky Yao. Sky Yao would not lose to the wise of the 3,000 worlds. If they really had to compare, the average intelligence of the Xiuzha of the 3,000 worlds was much higher than the Yao and Mo territories. Little Qi's front paw rose even higher. He was too familiar with this formation. If his paw stepped down, he had 100 ways to instantly. But light flashed through his blue eyes. His raised front paw did not fall down. In the valley, while the girl had been extremely rude, she had truly wanted to save him. She was a chi refinement cultivator and was not rich. Her bracelets and storage bags were of the lowest grade. She had never been stingy with spirit stones to treat her injuries. Little Chi was still hesitating. Ugh! Meng Qi suddenly grunted. Her body trembled slightly. The spirit energy was pouring in too quickly, and it was very difficult for her to absorb it. At this moment, two soft sounds were heard from the formation. Be careful. Meng Qi suddenly opened her eyes. Majestic spirit energy swept through her body in an instant. Her spiritual ocean expanded, and her realm rose from chi refinement to foundation establishment. At the same time, with her as the center, the chaotic spirit energy in the formation quickly surged in all directions. Without thinking, Meng Qi leaned over and hugged little Qi. She leaned over and protected the little white tiger's fluffy body in her arms. Ugh! Meng Qi grunted again. Xiozha's cultivation was always going against the heavens. From chi refinement to foundation establishment, there would be no tribulation. However, seizing the chi of heaven and earth in an instant would also cause the spirit energy around a person to become chaotic like a storm and sweep in all directions. Meng Qi, who had just advanced by a large realm, had abundant spirit energy in her body, forming a layer of solid armor around her body. Being hit by the chaotic spirit energy storm would not cause any harm other than great pain. In that instant, Meng Qi's face turned pale. The room became calm again. She exhaled and let go of little Qi. Meng Qi looked the little white tiger up and down, and carefully checked the wound on its front paw. Are you okay? She asked. Meng Qi reached out and pinched little Qi's ear. Didn't I tell you not to come over? She carelessly rubbed the white fur on its head and pinched little Qi's small semicircular ears. If I hurt you again, it'll be troublesome. Little Qi did not move. He stared at Meng Qi in a daze. It was just a chi refinement cultivator advancing to foundation establishment. Even if his injuries were 10 times worse now, he would not be hurt by such a spirit energy storm. What's wrong? Meng Qi pinched his ear again. Little Qi suddenly realized that he was still lying in the other's arms. The young girl's soft body was carefully protecting him. A light medicinal fragrance, as well as an unknown but pleasant smell, surrounded him. The little white tiger suddenly turned its head and struggled desperately in Meng Qi's arms. Ha! Meng Qi was stunned. Little Qi had already jumped off the ground and ran back to the bamboo bed. He looked at Meng Qi from afar, still in shock. The feeling that the other party had taken advantage of his serious injuries in the valley to do that to him came again. This time, the other party clearly did not do anything. He still felt as if a shiver ran down his spine. This was a feeling that he had never felt before, no matter how terrifying his opponent was. Meng Qi tilted her head and did not take it seriously. She sat down cross-legged again and scanned the inside of her body with her divine sense. Compared to when she was in chi refinement, her spirit ocean was 3 times larger. It was full of spirit energy, as if it would overflow at any time. This meant that she had finally succeeded in foundation establishment. Meng Qi slowly sighed and opened her eyes. She was in a good mood and stood up while humming a tune. She cleaned up the traces of the array on the floor and transferred the things she needed in the room into a new storage bag. After finishing all this, Meng Qi looked around. She had lived in this room for more than half a year in this life, and also for more than half a year in her previous life. In fact, in a cultivator's long life, a year was nothing. However, Meng Qi had experienced everything from life to death, and from death to life. When she thought everything was over, she opened her eyes and saw this familiar yet strange room. That feeling could not be described with words. Little Qi. Meng Qi walked towards the little white tiger. She took out the beast house and placed it on the bamboo bed. Then she rubbed the little white tiger's fluffy head. We are leaving here. Little Qi looked at the beast house, and then turned to look at Meng Qi in a daze. His breath was full of the girl's faint medicinal fragrance. It was as if this continued, even his body would be covered with the same scent. Let's go. Meng Qi picked up little Qi and put him in the beast house. She put the beast house and the beast house into her storage bag and looked around again. She turned and strode to the door. With a soft creak, the door opened. Sunlight instantly hit Meng-Chi in the face and coated her with a faint layer of soft light. Not far from the door, Qin Xiuma and Chu Tianfeng were whispering something. They heard the sound of the door opening and turned to look. "Are we leaving?" Qin Xiuma asked. His voice was a little lazy and casual. Meng-Chi even had the illusion that the two of them were old friends who had known each other for many years. And this was just an ordinary greeting. Yes. She was dazed for a moment and nodded. "Let's go." Qin Xiuma handed her a small brocade pouch. Meng-Chi took it and looked at it. There was a lot of cold sky grass in it, as well as some herbs from around the cool breeze valley. Qin Xiuma raised his chin. What if it works? He ordered the disciples of the cool breeze valley to pick it. The water of the cold pond was bone-chilling. Even if the disciples in the foundation establishment stage jumped down and came back up, they would be so cold that their lips would turn white and their teeth would chatter. They would tremble and be unable to speak. Qin Xiuma watched them pick the cold sky grass to pay off their debts. Especially the 3 female disciples. After going down twice, they cried and refused to go into the water again. In fact, the male disciples of the Cool Breeze Valley were also miserable, but when they saw their junior sisters crying like that, they volunteered to take on the work themselves and begged Qin Xiuma to let the female cultivators go. Qin Xiuma didn't say anything at that time. He stood coldly on the edge of the cold pond to supervise the work, but what appeared in his mind was the way Meng-Chi went into the water to pick the cold sky grass without hesitation when she treated his injury. DSK. Qin Xiuma couldn't help but sigh when he thought about it now. Only crying children would get candy. Meng-Chi always looked calm and collected. It was really. Qin Xiuma stared at Meng-Chi in front of him in a daze. It was really. He suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, and a touch of softness flashed through his eyes. "Let's go," he said. "I owe you so many spirit stones. The sooner we start work and pay it off, the sooner I'll feel more at ease." Meng-Chi shrugged. She put the brocade pouch into her storage bag and then quickly calculated. Although there are a lot of these herbs, their grades are low and they're very common. They're not worth much. "It's okay." Qin Xiuma shrugged indifferently. "Little drops make a mickle. You can keep them first." "Okay." Meng-Chi didn't refuse. These herbs were useless to Qin Xiuma anyway. "You're really not coming with us?" Chu Tianfeng looked at Meng-Chi, and then at Qin Xiuma. He regretted it. He really regretted it. Why wasn't he so thick-skinned? He could also shamelessly pretend to be poor and then not pay back the debt. "No." Meng-Chi shook her head. "Young Palace Master Chu, take care." She cupped her hands at Chu Tianfeng and walked out side by side with Qin Xiuma. "I'm going to the library." Elder Yan Mingfeng should have already returned. Meng-Chi must say goodbye to him. Some of the Cool Breeze Valley disciples had already left the mountain. There were also some who wanted to follow the Burning Sky Palace back to the Burning City, and were now gathered together. In the Cool Breeze Valley, it suddenly became quiet. Meng-Chi and Qin Xiuma walked all the way to the library, and didn't even meet a single disciple on the way. The sect, which used to be bustling, became desolate in the blink of an eye. Outside the book collection pavilion, it was still quiet. Meng-Chi stood outside the door and said respectfully, "Disciple Meng-Chi is here to bid farewell to Elder Yan. Come in." A mellow and gentle voice came from the library. Meng-Chi motioned for Qin Xiuma to wait for her outside. She pushed the door open and walked in. Yan Mingfeng sat cross-legged on a chair on the first floor of the library. He was still wearing the simple green robe, and didn't seem to have changed from before. It was as if the things that happen these days had never happened. "Elder Yan." Meng-Chi bowed respectfully to him. "I'm leaving the Cool Breeze Valley." "Yes." Yan Mingfeng nodded. "That's good too." He paused and suddenly asked, "Meng-Chi, if there are no spirit stones and no remorse, and those disciples still suspect you, guard against you, and slander you, will you treat them or not?" Meng-Chi was stunned. Without waiting for her answer, Yan Mingfeng asked again, "If Lu Qingran is also injured, will you treat them or not?" Yan Mingfeng opened his half-closed eyes and glanced at Meng-Chi's face. Without giving her a chance to think, he raised his voice and urged, "Answer me." "If I can, I will." Meng Qi said. A smile flashed across Yan Mingfeng's eyes. Can you teach me the treatment method of the divine devouring vine? He asked again. Of course. Meng Qi took out a bamboo scroll from her storage bag and handed it to Elder Yan respectfully. I took a risk and used the most clumsy method to treat the divine devouring vine's injury. She was not lying. In her previous life, when she met Su Junmo, Meng Qi was only a foundation establishment cultivator. The number of cultivation techniques she could use and the number of pills she could refine was not much more than what she had now. Even among all the medical cultivators in the Trichiliocosm, it was not enough. In fact, no matter if it was Su Junmo, Chu Tianfeng, or Qin Xioma, Meng Qi did not use any particularly powerful cultivation techniques or pills to save them. In her previous life, she had already vaguely sensed that there was no difference between cultivation techniques and pills. There were similarities between poisons and diseases in the world. Sometimes, even if it looked particularly powerful, it could be treated with the most basic cultivation techniques and pills. After her rebirth, this idea became more and more mature. That was why she cultivated all the low-level cultivation techniques that medical cultivators knew to the highest level that she could now cultivate. If it can save people, it's a good method. There is no difference between clumsy and smart. Yan Mingfeng took the bamboo scroll and waved his hand. 3 bamboo scrolls flew out of his storage bag and slowly landed in Meng Qi's hand. Yan Mingfeng explained, "This is what I've seen and heard while traveling in the East all these years. I'm using it to exchange for the method to cure the divine devouring vine." He looked at Meng Qi and said, "I'm also going on a long journey. If fate wills it, we will meet again in the future. Go ahead." After Yan Mingfeng finished speaking, he closed his eyes again. His body was full of spirit qi. When he was in seclusion, it was obvious that he had advanced by a small level. Meng Qi bowed respectfully to him again, held the 3 bamboo scrolls, and turned to leave the library. She lowered her head and looked at the warm bamboo scrolls in her palm. Then she sent some spirit qi into them. The contents of the bamboo scrolls immediately appeared in front of her. Elder Yan Mingfeng had been traveling all year round and had saved countless people. He was so knowledgeable that he was even more knowledgeable than Meng Qi before her rebirth. Elder Yan said that these 3 bamboo scrolls were used to exchange for the method to cure the divine devouring vine. Meng Qi only needed to read a few lines to know how precious these bamboo scrolls were. Anyone who wanted to go far on the path of medical cultivation would be willing to pay a huge price in exchange for these 3 bamboo scrolls. Meng Qi could not help but turn back and look at the library again. The door of the library had been closed again. Cool Breeze Valley was in a precarious situation. No disciple was in the mood to come here at this time. "Let's go." Qin Xioma, who was waiting outside, came forward and said in a low voice, "The people from Burning Sky Palace have just left." "Okay." Meng Qi nodded. She kept the bamboo scrolls. "Let's go." Meng Qi turned back and walked down Cool Breeze Valley. This time, she did not summon a paper crane. She walked down the mountain slowly along the mountain path. Qin Xioma followed behind her silently. When they were about to see Cool Breeze Town, he asked, "Where are we going first?" "I want to go first." "Meng Qi, wait for me." Before Meng Qi could finish speaking, Su Junmo's clear voice suddenly came from behind. Qin Xioma frowned. Meng Qi also turned her head and looked at the way they came, speechless. Su Junmo, who had disappeared for several days, quickly walked to them. "Where are you going?" He quickly added, "I can pay spirit stones. Please take me." Chapter 42. Heavens Beyond Heaven. On the floating island where the Xian auction was located, there was a green breeze pill on the desk in front of Xiang Linma. The small round pill didn't look very eye-catching, nor was it a precious high-grade pill. Sigh. He sighed softly and placed the pill into a small porcelain bottle with his palms together. Sitting alone at home sighing, a woman's voice came from outside Xiang Linma's door. "Is this a young man missing a beautiful woman? Stop joking." Xiang Linma smiled bitterly and looked at the door. Xue Jinwen was leaning against the door in a red dress. She smiled lazily and seductively. "I don't have a beautiful woman to miss." He looked at her. Why are you here? Someone from my family told me that the Decennial Medical Cultivators Assembly will be held in the East Border, Descending Star City. Do you want to go? Huh. Xiang Linma was stunned. Descending Star City? Descending Star City in the East Border was a familiar name. One of the three major sects in the East Border, the Descending Star Pavilion, was there. But why Descending Star City? Xiang Linma did not understand. The Descending Star Pavilion is the most powerful sword sect in the East Border. The Medical Cultivators Assembly was a grand medical cultivators event held once every 10 years in the 3000 worlds. It was first held 700 years ago, and had been going on for hundreds of years. When the time came, medical cultivators from all over the world would gather and share their experiences. The most important thing was to choose the members of the Apricot Alliance who would be in charge of communicating with the medical cultivators in the 4 realms for the next 10 years. Besides, there would also be some competitions to give new medical cultivators or cultivators who had just stepped onto the path of medical cultivation a chance to shine. It was also an opportunity for some itinerant cultivators or medical cultivators like Xiang Linma who were originally from weak sections. They might be chosen by the major sects and their fates would change. Xiang Linma valued this opportunity very much. He had been preparing for it since 3 years ago. However, the Medical Cultivators Assembly was usually held by the major medical cultivators in the 4 realms. The assembly 10 years ago was held in the West Border, where Shui Jinwen was located. It was held by the Shui family. Descending Star Pavilion? I heard that they have always been fair and upright. Xiang Linma looked at Shui Jinwen in confusion. But that's the holy land for sword cultivators. It has nothing to do with us medical cultivators. Shui Jinwen raised her eyebrows and smiled charmingly. The Medical Cultivation Conference has never been set as only medical cultivation sects can host it. I heard. She was born in the Shui family and was a disciple of one of the top 3 sects in the Western Kingdom. She was much more informed than Xiang Lin Mo. The young new pavilion master of the Falling Star Pavilion fell in love with a female medical cultivator. In order to win the beauty's smile, he worked hard to fight for this opportunity. Shui Jinwen chuckled. His eyes were filled with undisguised envy. This can be considered spending a lot of money to make a beauty smile. Heroic, generous, romantic. I like it. Xiang Linma. Why are you hesitating? Shui Jinwen smiled. Don't tell me that you don't intend to attend this spiritual conference in Descending Star City? She paused for a moment before continuing. I heard that you've been preparing to go to the eastern border during this period of time, so you've been coming here less often. Isn't it great that the Medical Cultivation Conference is held there as well? That's true. Xiang Linma nodded. He stood up and bowed to Shui Jinwen. Thank you, Daoist Shui. I'll go and prepare to go to the eastern border. You. He looked at Shui Jinwen hesitantly. You'll be going too, right? Of course. Shui Jinwen nodded. She turned to look afar. From where she was, she could not see the disciples of the various sects who were looking for little Qi on the floating island of the Xian auction hall. Shui Jinwen smiled again. Do you think little Qi will be going too? Xiang Linma smiled bitterly again. How would I know? It's been a lot more crowded here recently. I heard that there are people coming here every day with all kinds of excuses, just to find out more about little Qi. That's right. Shui Jinwen's eyes shone brightly. I don't know if that delicate and cute little face is her disguise or her real appearance. She looks like she's only 17 or 18 years old. If she's really that young, I wonder which powerful hidden sect can cultivate such a monstrous genius. If that's the case, little Qi probably won't go to the Medical Cultivation Conference. Xiang Linma was a little disappointed. I wonder if she'll come to Sky Beyond Heaven again. She'll come, Shui Jinwen said confidently. Last time, she asked me about some materials and how to order medicinal herbs. I guess. She narrowed her eyes. The little girl was probably sent out by her sex masters to train alone. She's smart and good at making money. However, the things that her masters gave her should be very limited. So she'll come again. After all, Sky Beyond Heaven. Shui Jinwen raised his eyes and looked at the 7th floating island that was floating in the sky far away. If you can't find what you need even in Sky Beyond Heaven, It'll be even more difficult in other places. So, she said firmly, little Qi will definitely come again. 3,000 worlds, East Border, Burnt City. Meng Qi stood outside the city gate and let out a long sigh. After half a month, they finally arrived. Beside her stood Qin Xiaoma in black. However, his face was almost darker than his clothes. On the other side of Meng Qi stood white-robed Su Zhenmo. In front of others, he was the most standard elegant young master in the chaotic world. He was handsome, noble, and elegant. No matter where he stood, he would attract the attention of many women. However, behind others, Meng Qi thought about it, and was about to break down. Yes. In her previous life, she had seen how terrifying a talkative fox was. However, she had forgotten that when she met Su Zhenmo, he was injured and seriously injured. He could not even maintain his human form. He was very weak. Meng Qi, shut up. Shut up. As soon as Su Zhenmo opened his mouth, Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma scolded him in unison. A talkative fox was not scary. A chatterbox is even one major realm higher than you at your peak, and several minor realms. It was very scary if you could not get rid of it no matter what you did. Su Zhenmo blinked and obediently shut his mouth, feeling wronged. He did not dare to disobey Meng Qi's words. Who knew if this mysterious female Xiao that his master asked him to investigate would become the future demon empress, his other master? Let's enter the city. Meng Qi actually liked peace and quiet, but this time, she led the two of them directly to the largest inn in the center of Burnt City. They went wherever there were the most people. Compared to Fresh Breeze Town, Burnt City was one of the 10 largest cities in the East Border. Just the city alone was dozens of times larger than Fresh Breeze Town. The city was unusually prosperous. From the city gate to the east, people came and went everywhere. It was very lively. Most of the people living in Fresh Breeze Town were ordinary people. Other than the Xiozha from Fresh Breeze Valley, it was rare to encounter other Xiozha in Fresh Breeze Town. Among the people coming and going in Burnt City, the proportion of Xiozha was not small. The shops on the sides of the street, other than the normal restaurants, also sold Dan, talismans, Xiozha weapons, and Ling energy materials. It was not the first time Meng Qi had come to Burnt City. In her last life, she had only seen the scenery on horseback and had not walked around properly. This time, her state of mind was very different. Walking along the street, she felt many things were very interesting. We've arrived. Meng Qi and the others quickly walked in front of the largest inn in Burnt City, the Rui residence. This place was close to the center of Burnt City, and was even more prosperous. The Rui residence was very large. The front was a restaurant for drinking and eating, and the back was for people to live in. At this time, people were coming and going in the restaurant in front. There were almost no empty seats. In front of so many people, Su Zhenmo would not talk endlessly. Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma finally had a moment of silence. In the past, even if they told him to shut up, he would at most endure for 15 minutes. As long as he could find a reason, he would talk endlessly. Guests, please come in. The waiter of the Rui residence quickly came over. Are you three having a meal or staying? Staying, Meng Qi said. Please give me a quiet room. All right. The waiter smiled and led Meng Qi and the others to the back of the restaurant. You have come at a bad time. Recently, Burnt City has had many guests from Western Jia. Right now, there is only one independent courtyard that is empty. There are 4 rooms in the courtyard. Do you mind? Please take us to see. Meng Qi smiled at him. Qin Xiaoma naturally followed behind her. On the way, Meng Qi was responsible for all of his food, accommodation, and transportation expenses. In any case, there was no need to worry about debts. For him, the more he owed, the better. The best was the kind that he could not repay in his entire life. The layout of the Rui residence was very interesting. In addition to the restaurant in front, after passing through the restaurant, there was a beautiful garden. There were 7 or 8 pavilions in the garden. There was a distance between the pavilions, and there were many vines and flowers planted around them, hiding the pavilions among the green leaves and flowers. Standing outside, it was difficult to see the situation inside. It was elegant and interesting. The waiter saw that Meng Qi looked at the pavilions a few more times, and introduced with a warm smile. This is our restaurant's private room. Outside each pavilion, there is a protective array. Unless a powerful cultivator above the spirit-severing stage comes, otherwise, you can't hear the conversation of the guests from outside. It's quite interesting. Meng Qi smiled. Su Junmo's eyes lit up. Please give us a private room, we can eat first. Not hungry. Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma said in unison again. Su Junmo. He felt wronged, but he still did not dare to contradict the future demon empress. Meng Qi took a deep breath. Her temper was really good. During this period of time, she was a little irritable because of Su Junmo. She suddenly felt a little sympathy for Lu Qingran. Meng Qi did not believe that after Su Junmo and Lu Qingran became familiar with each other and fell in love, he would still hide his true nature in front of her. It was very impressive that Lu Qingran could endure it and stick to him every day. Thinking of Lu Qingran, Meng Qi's eyes flashed slightly. After leaving the main hall of the Cool Breeze Valley that day, she had not seen this senior sister again. When they left the Cool Breeze Valley, it was already very cold and lonely. The sect leader was still there, but the disciples left and went to the Burning Heaven Palace. She did not know if senior sister Lu had returned to the Cool Breeze Valley later. Meng Qi followed behind the waiter thoughtfully, following the path paved with stones and passing through the garden. Brother Su. They had not walked a few steps when flowers swayed in front of one of the pavilions, and a young man in a dark blue robe walked out. It really is you. When the man saw Su Junmo, he immediately laughed and walked towards Meng Qi. I heard from my sister that Brother Su came to the east border. I was guessing with my friends whether we would meet Brother Su in the east border this time. I didn't expect to meet Brother Su in the burning city, so coincidentally. The blue-robed man laughed even more happily. If my sister knew, she would regret not coming to the burning city with me. Su Junmo smiled slightly. Brother Xue is joking. These two are? The young man surnamed Xue turned his head to look at Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. The black-robed man was a Jindan cultivator. The other was, a Zhuji cultivator? The young man still had a bright smile on his face. Brother Su, aren't you going to introduce these two fellow Taoists? Su Junmo glanced at the young man and introduced him first. This is Xue Qingxian, fellow Taoist Xue. He paused and continued. He is the first among the younger generation of the Xue family of the Wind Alliance in the west border. Brother Su, you flatter me. Xue Qingxian smiled slightly. But as the eldest son, he is indeed the oldest. West border Wind Alliance Xue family, Meng Qi's cold and indifferent expression changed instantly. Her eyes brightened, and her expression when looking at Xue Qingxian was also different from before. Su Junmo did not know how to describe it, and it was not flattery. It should be similar to sword cultivators going to the Falling Star Pavilion, Dharma cultivators from the east border stepping into the Burning Sky Palace, and he could enter the celestial tree in the demon world. It was the kind of look of joy that one would naturally show when they saw the successor of their own holy land. Su Junmo silently looked at Xue Qingxian. He had stayed in the west border for a long time, and was very familiar with the four great families of the Wind Alliance. Xue Qingxian was just being modest. He was extremely talented in cultivation and medical skills. Su Junmo knew that he was extremely outstanding not only in the Xue family, but also in the entire younger generation of the Wind Alliance. This is Meng Qi from the Cool Breeze Valley, and this is Qin Xiaoma. Su Junmo introduced the two. Greetings, fellow Taoists. Xue Qingxian politely cupped his hands and greeted them. Qin Xiaoma coldly returned the greeting. Fellow Taoist Xue. Meng Qi returned the greeting and looked at Xue Qingxian with bright eyes. Living in the east border, I have long heard of the Wind Alliance. Xue Qingxian smiled slightly. He did not dislike Meng Qi's gaze, although it was bright and clear when looking at him. However, that kind of brightness did not contain any desire, or scheming. It was very clean. Fellow Taoist Meng, are you also a medical cultivator? Xue Qingxian could not help but ask. Yes. Meng Qi nodded. Then if fellow Taoist does not mind, why don't we enter together? Xue Qingxian turned sideways and made an inviting gesture. This time, I was traveling with 2 fellow disciples and received a notice from our elders. The 3 of us came to the east border together. Fellow Taoist Shui is also a medical cultivator, so you can verify what you have learned. It can be considered a small spell conference in advance. Elegant, right? Shui Chengxian smiled as he spoke. He was handsome, cultured and elegant, and came from the Shui family. In addition, he was extremely talented in cultivation and medical skills. He was already a 4th-stage nascent soul cultivator at a young age, and his medical skills had reached 5th grade. Not only was he going to be the next head of the Shui family, there were even rumors that the position of Alliance Master of the Wind Alliance might be his in the future. Therefore, Shui Chengxian had always been very popular with young female cultivators in the west border. Meng Qi nodded. Then I'll have to bother you. Su Zhenmo. He looked at Meng Qi, and then at Shui Chengxian. After following this girl for more than 10 days, he was not blind. He was naturally smart and sensitive, and he had long seen that Meng Qi did not like to socialize. Along the way, she did not talk much with Qin Xiaoma, and she also did not like to talk to him. Now that she was beaming with joy at Shui Chengxian, it was a bit bad. Please. Shui Chengxian turned sideways to make way for the pavilion's entrance. He also cupped his hands at Qin Xiaoma. Fellow Taoist Qin, please. Brother Su. He looked at Su Zhenmo with a smile. These 2 fellow disciples both know Brother Su. They will be very happy to meet Brother Su here. Please. Su Zhenmo was helpless. He nodded. After entering the pavilion, he rushed to sit next to Shui Chengxian, separating him from Meng Qi. Sure enough, he also knew the other 2 people inside. They were also from the Wind Alliance, Morong Fei and Wen He. The Shui family, the Morong family, the Wen family, and the Li family were the 4 major families of the Wind Alliance. Shui Chengxian introduced Meng Qi and the others to the 2 of them. Morong Fei and the others already knew Su Zhenmo, and with Shui Chengxian around, the atmosphere quickly became harmonious. Fellow Taoist Meng, are you also going for the Medical Cultivators Conference? They briefly chatted with Su Zhenmo about what they had seen and heard recently. Shui Chengxian looked at Meng Qi with a smile. If so, we can travel together later. Medical Cultivators Conference? Meng Qi was not unfamiliar with this. However, after she left the Cool Breeze Valley in her previous life, she traveled the 3,000 worlds and coincidentally met her master, so she did not join any sections. Therefore, she had only heard of this Medical Cultivators Conference. It was a gathering of the top medical cultivators in the 3,000 worlds once every 10 years, but she had never been to it. Yes. Shui Chengxian was slightly surprised, but he quickly explained patiently. This year happens to be the 10-year period. It will be held in Descending Star City at the beginning of next month, and the Descending Star Pavilion will host this Medical Cultivators Conference. Descending Star Pavilion? Meng Qi was extremely surprised. Yes. Shui Chengxian nodded with a smile. However, embarrassment flashed across Morong Fei and Wen He's faces. No matter how powerful the Descending Star Pavilion was, it was easy to be surprised that a sword cultivator sect would host a medical cultivators conference. When they first heard about it, their expressions were similar to Meng Qi's. But isn't the Descending Star Pavilion a sword cultivator sect? Meng Qi did not understand and asked. It's a sword cultivator sect. Shui Chengxian nodded with a smile. I heard from my father that the new pavilion master of the Descending Star Pavilion promised a 10-year period. Within 10 years he will do his best to hunt strange beasts and strange birds in the Starfall Sea that can be used as medicine. I see. Meng Qi was suddenly enlightened. No wonder. Most medical cultivators were immersed in the cultivation of medical skills, and their attack techniques were ordinary. The Starfall Sea was said to be the place where the 3,000 worlds, the demon world, and the devil world were connected. There were many strange flowers, strange herbs, and strange beasts. Many of them could be used as medicine, and some of them could even be classified as natural treasures. However, the Starfall Sea was extremely dangerous. Those below the spirit severing stage would die as soon as they stepped into it. Even spirit severing stage cultivators were in danger there. Not to mention hunting those strange beasts, just staying alive was extremely difficult. Those who wanted to hunt and cultivate, there were at least insightful emptiness realm cultivators. There were not many insightful emptiness realm cultivators in the 3,000 worlds. How many of them who had reached the insightful emptiness realm would go to the Starfall Sea to collect herbs or hunt strange beasts for them? Even so, I still feel that it's not very appropriate. Morong Fei was slightly younger. His dissatisfaction was written all over his face. At this moment he snorted softly. I'm afraid this will become the biggest black mark in the history of the Medical Cultivators Assembly. Yes. When he also looked unhappy. I don't know what the teachers are thinking. The 3,000 worlds originally valued sword cultivators and spell cultivators more. 300 years ago, the formation became strong again, and the weapon cultivators grew stronger day by day. On the other hand, we feel that we are less and less valued. Now even the assembly is hosted by sword cultivator sections. I feel that medical cultivators are about to become the vassals of sword cultivators and spell cultivators. Xue Chengxian did not speak. He looked at Meng Qi. What do you think, Taoist Meng? I think it's okay. Meng Qi said seriously. This pavilion master of the Starfall Pavilion is actually willing to go to the Starfall Sea to hunt strange beasts for 10 years and collect herbs for us. I don't think it's a big deal that the Apricot Alliance gave him a special seat. Morong Fei and Wen He were stunned. They looked at Meng Qi in surprise. A cultivator who just built his foundation? What the hell? Did she just say the Apricot Alliance? This was an alliance jointly elected by all the major medical cultivator sections. It was responsible for contacting the medical cultivators of the 4 realms. Although the Apricot Alliance was established, it did not interfere with the internal affairs of the medical cultivator sects of the 4 realms. However, if there was an emergency, the Apricot Alliance had the right to conscript all the medical cultivators of the 3,000 worlds. They were also responsible for contacting the major medical cultivator sections. Almost all the members of the Apricot Alliance were the sect masters or elders of the major medical cultivator sects of the 4 realms. Was this girl joking? Ha ha. Xue Chengxian clapped his hands and laughed heartily. He lightly knocked on the table and stood up to raise his wine cup. With a smile he personally filled Meng Qi's wine cup. Taoist Meng's words are interesting. I really should toast you. As Xue Chengxian spoke, he raised the wine cup in front of him and drank the wine in the cup. He smiled at Meng Qi. I'll drink. Taoist Meng, please. The wine of Rui House was sweet and mellow. It was not strong. Meng Qi was not good at drinking. He also raised his head and drank the wine in the cup. Refreshing. Xue Chengxian sat down and turned to look at the surprised Morong Fei and Wen He. He sighed. Both of you are not as clear-headed as Taoist Meng. He said, what we pursue is the great Tao of medicine or these superficial gains and losses. Morong Fei and Wen He were startled. We medical cultivators may be able to enter the Starfall Sea and retreat safely. However, how many of us can kill the strange beasts and ferocious beasts inside? Master can. Wen He muttered. The others, he shook his head. The 2 elders should be able to do it too. However, it's hard to say. The Starfall Sea was already a legendary existence for young disciples like them. That's why the #1 sword cultivator in the Eastern Territory is willing to enter the Starfall Sea for us for 10 years. The other party only requested that the Medical Cultivator Conference be held in Starfall City. We are the ones benefiting from this. As Xue Chengxian finished speaking, he looked at Meng Qi with a smile. Taoist Meng, do you think so? Meng Qi nodded his head. Yes. Xue Chengxian's smile grew wider. If we can exchange a seat in the Apricot Alliance for another 10 years of hunting, he looked at Meng Qi with a smile. We will be making a huge profit. That's right. Meng Qi nodded his head again. She even wanted to say that if she could exchange her position as the Deputy Alliance Leader of the Apricot Alliance for the eternal help of the Pavilion Leader of the Falling Star Pavilion, the medical cultivators in the 3 realms should be overjoyed. That was the Starfall Sea. There were many rare and precious elixirs that only existed in legends. They were heavenly materials and earthly treasures that were only recorded in ancient books. It was even said that some medical cultivators had died in there, and left behind jade scrolls that recorded their medical skills. To all the medical cultivators in the 3 realms, this was an immeasurable amount of wealth. Xue Chengxian smiled as he looked at Mengqi. His gaze was gentler than when he first met Mengqi. He took the initiative to invite her. Daoist Meng, if you are free, why don't you come with us to the Starfall City? Before the beginning of next month, all the medical cultivators in the 4 realms who can spare time will go. Many sects will also recruit outstanding disciples during the spiritual conference. Mengqi's heart skipped a beat. She had never participated in such a grand event. Just the thought of medical cultivators from the 3 realms gathering together made her excited. Perhaps she could find a way to cure little Qi there. All right. Chapter 43. Okay. Xue Chengxian said. Burn City is the closest city to Western Jia. It will take about 7 days to get to Fallen Star City from here. We are going to visit friends here, and prepare to depart in 3 days. Does fellow Meng have other plans? His gentle attitude surprised Morong Fei, and when he who were watching from the side. Xue Chengxian was indeed the most talented and capable person in the younger generation of the Wind Alliance. They also knew that the elders had high hopes for him, and that he was the most likely candidate to become the leader of the Wind Alliance. Morong Fei and when he had a good relationship with Xue Chengxian. They grew up together and knew that although he was gentle, had no Dao companion, and was polite to female Xiao, he treated everyone the same, and was not close to anyone. Especially when he had a little sister. His family had long wanted to make Wen family's little sister Xue Qingshuan's Dao companion. Xue family and Wen family could be considered in-laws. If they supported each other in the future, it would be good for both families. When the elders of the 2 families mentioned this, Xue Chengxian handled it with a smile. He was gentle and polite to Wen family's little sister as usual. No one could find fault with him, and they could see that he did not have any other thoughts about her. It was the first time when he and Morong Fei saw Xue Chengxian take the initiative with a female Xiao. They looked at each other and couldn't help but look at Mengqi. This Xiaozha who just entered Juji was not bad-looking, but Cool Breeze Valley. The 2 thought about Su Junmo's introduction and tried their best to recall, but could not remember which medical Xiao sect was called this. Cool Breeze Valley was too small. Several generations of sect leaders were all Jindan Xiao, and it was at the border of Eastern Jia, far away from Western Jia. Morong Fei and when he were disciples of large sects and had never heard of such a small sect. They looked at Xue Chengxian in confusion. Was this the young talent that the elders of the Wind Alliance appreciated? The person that so many female Xiao in Western Jia could not move him actually fell in love with this Juji girl at first sight? Xue Chengxian did not look at his 2 friends and patiently waited for Mengqi's reply. Mengqi calculated carefully. She came to Burnt City for the jade cicada vine on the cliff outside the city. Once she got it, she could leave. Furthermore, she looked at Su Junmo with satisfaction. Ever since Xue Chengxian appeared, he had been quiet. She definitely had to go to Descending Star City. Along the way, there were medical cultivators from the Wind League chatting. It was much more interesting than listening to the talkative fox talk about the gossip of the demon realm. Mengqi pondered for a moment. Ignoring Su Junmo's desperate winks, she nodded and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Xue. Shall we meet at the city gate in 3 days? All right." Xue Chengxian smiled. Is Taoist Meng busy in the Burnt City? Why don't you tell me and see if I can help? Although I haven't been in Burnt City for long, I still have a few friends here who can help. Thank you, fellow Taoist Xue. Mengqi also smiled at him. I can handle it myself. Her head became a little dizzy, but her expression was still calm. Looking at the Xue Chengxian in front of her, she felt as if he had become 2 people. Was it because of the cup of wine just now? Mengqi had almost never touched wine before. In fact, if a cultivator's realm was higher, it would be difficult for them to get drunk. However, she was only in the foundation stage after all. The wine of Wishing Lane was brewed with more than 10 kinds of spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. When it entered the mouth, it was sweet and refreshing, but it had a strong aftertaste. Jindan cultivators who were not good at drinking would easily get drunk after drinking a few cups. Meng Qi subconsciously raised her hand and supported herself on the table. Qin Xiaoma was the first to notice her change. He was originally sitting indifferently at the side, ignoring Xue Qingxian and the others. At this time he suddenly stood up. "Let's go." Meng Qi looked up at him, her eyes becoming hazy. "Go," she shook her head. "Go where?" "Go back and rest," Qin Xiaoma said. Oh. Meng Qi nodded obediently, and her fair cheeks were dyed with a layer of red. Qin Xiaoma's fingers that were hanging by his side moved slightly. He was used to Meng Qi's serious and calm appearance, but she kept people at arm's length. When he looked at her like this, she had some of the innocence of a young girl. She looked unexpectedly cute. As expected, she was drunk, right? She would not be so obedient when she was sober. Qin Xiaoma coughed softly and reached out to grab her arm to pull Meng Qi up. As expected, the young girl stood up and obediently stood beside him. It was a long journey, and she can't handle alcohol. "I'll take her to rest." Qin Xiaoma threw down these words and walked out of the pavilion with Meng Qi. "I'm sorry." Xue Qingxian hurriedly caught up with them and sent them out of the pavilion. He looked at Meng Qi apologetically. "I didn't know that Daoist Meng doesn't drink. I was reckless." Xue Qingxian hurriedly called the waiter who was waiting outside. "Send the two of them to rest. I'll take care of their bills." "Yes." The waiter smiled brightly and led Qin Xiaoma to the backyard. "This way, please." Xue Qingxian watched Qin Xiaoma and Meng Qi leave before returning to the pavilion. "Brother Su." He laughed bitterly. "I didn't expect Daoist Meng to get drunk after a cup of wine. I was reckless." Su Zhenmo smiled faintly. "It's okay." He stayed behind because he had questions to ask. Is it true that the pavilion master of the Falling Star Pavilion offered to enter the Falling Star Sea for 10 years in exchange for the Medical Cultivators Conference to be held in Falling Star City? Yes. Xue Qingxian sat down. My father didn't agree at first. It's fate. He looked at Su Zhenmo with a smile. What I used to convince him was what fellow Daoist Meng said just now. He paused and continued. Medical cultivators like us aren't good at offensive spells. The Falling Star Sea is a priceless treasure land with countless spiritual herbs and spiritual medicines. For thousands of years, many seniors have entered the Falling Star Sea to hunt mutated beasts. Unfortunately, Xue Qingxian sighed softly. Less than 1 out of 10 people can leave unscathed. Those who can leave the Falling Star Sea with the things they want are even rarer. The #1 sword cultivator in the Eastland is willing to enter the Falling Star Sea to hunt for us for 10 years. This is a good thing for the medical cultivators of the 4 realms. Although that's the case, it's still a little embarrassing. Morong Fei snorted. Isn't he embarrassing us by doing this? So what? Xue Qingxian turned to look at Morong Fei. His gaze was like lightning as he looked at his good friend. Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma were not around. Su Zhenmo had always been on good terms with them, and was very familiar with each other. Xue Qingxian was much more direct. Is face important? Or is the Tao of medical cultivators more important? The seniors have already approved of it. If you still can't see through this, be careful that your Tao heart will be damaged. Morong Fei was shocked. Xue Qingxian was the oldest among the 3 of them. He usually took care of Morong Fei and Wenhe. The 3 of them grew up together. Xue Qingxian was like a big brother to them. He knew that Xue Qingxian was not reprimanding him. Instead, Xue Qingxian was warning him. Yes. Morong Fei hurriedly sat up straight and respectfully responded. Xue Qingxian smiled slightly. He poured a cup of wine for Su Zhenmo. Fellow Daoist Meng, you're quite open-minded at such a young age. You can see through this layer in an instant. No wonder Brother Su likes you. You're really interesting and worth befriending. Su Zhenmo. He held the wine cup but did not drink it. In his mind, he recalled Xue Qingxuan's words. Why did he feel that this guy was implying something? What was fate? What was interesting? Oh my, could it be that he was interested in Meng Qi? Su Zhenmo immediately became vigilant. Guess this is it. The waiter led Qin Xiaoma and Meng Qi into a courtyard. There were 4 rooms inside, and the courtyard was eerie. It looked quiet and elegant. Have a good rest. He could also see that Meng Qi seemed to be drunk. If there's anything you need, just tell me. I'll take my leave first. Qin Xiaoma took out a second-stage spirit stone from his storage bag and threw it to him. He supported Meng Qi and sent her to the room on the left. The drunk Meng Qi was obedient. When Qin Xiaoma asked her to sit, she sat on the bed obediently. Can you do it yourself? Qin Xiaoma poured a cup of tea for Meng Qi and handed it to her. He watched the girl take it and drink it obediently without saying a word. Okay. Meng Qi nodded in a daze. She felt a little lightheaded even though she had not completely lost consciousness. Her surroundings were also a little hazy. She could hear Qin Xiaoma talking to her, but every word seemed to float very far away. It took a long time for it to reach her ears. I can do it. Meng Qi nodded and repeated, Qin Xiaoma. He was a little worried. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Meng Qi, who was nodding her head as she sat on the edge of the bed. Some Xiuzha did not care about trifles and were less wary of men and women. The other was a 17 or 18-year-old girl and his savior. Qin Xiaoma stared at Meng Qi for a moment and sighed lightly. He formed a spell with his hand and summoned a small stream of clear spring water. The spring water was icy cold and soaked the soft towel Qin Xiaoma found. He handed the towel to Meng Qi and said hoarsely, Wipe your face. Okay. Meng Qi stilled for a moment before taking the wet towel and obediently wiping her face. Qin Xiaoma looked at her increasingly white face and long, trembling eyelashes. Drunk, her voice seemed to be even softer. Soft and sweet. That young girl who was especially fierce when asking for ling stones didn't seem to be her at all. Wipe your hands. Qin Xiaoma summoned the clear spring water to wash the soft towel. In his life, no. Even in his last life, he had never done such a thing. If his master saw him using the sex spell to do such a thing, even if he was unharmed, not betrayed by his close friends, and not possessed by his cultivation, the other would angrily expel him from the sect and not recognize him as a disciple. But the obedient little girl in front of him had already taken the soft towel and obediently wiped her hands. Qin Xiaoma. It was a bit annoying. Such an obedient Meng Qi, he wanted to bully her. You. When he spoke again, his voice was even hoarser. Rest well. Qin Xiaoma's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He looked at Meng Qi and nodded obediently. Call me if you need anything, he said. I'll be right outside. Finishing, he didn't dare to linger. Probably because of the alcohol. The room was filled with the light medicinal fragrance of Meng Qi. The spirit flower wine mixed with the good fortune seal. Qin Xiaoma strode to the door and took a deep breath, but he was still unable to drive away the irritation in his body. He didn't turn his head and waved his hand. The door closed, completely isolating him from Meng Qi. The black-clothed youth stomped his feet, his arms crossed in front of his chest, and stood under the eaves outside Meng Qi's door. Shui Chengxian may be a good person. An air raised in a place like the Wind Alliance would not be so warm to a Xiuzha, who had just entered Juji for no reason. Qin Xiaoma exhaled. His gaze became cold and sharp. Meng Qi sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. She was slightly drunk, but a cup of wine was not enough to make her completely drunk. Adding on that she had just used cold water to wipe her face and hands, she was slightly more awake than before. She shook her head and first took out the beast house from her storage bag. Little Qi jumped out. His nose twitched and he suddenly turned to look at Meng Qi. She drank? Meng Qi was already sitting cross-legged on the bed. She held the jade scroll of Sky Beyond in her hand. In the past, she would not be so careless. But today, the alcohol had made her a little slower. She did not even set up a protective array, and directly sent her spiritual energy into the jade scroll. A faint light flashed and Meng Qi's eyes lit up. She was already standing outside the gate of Sky Beyond. She exhaled, and the drunkenness seemed to have followed her to Sky Beyond. Meng Qi shook her head and walked forward. She was going to find some bamboo scrolls that recorded the contents of the medical cultivation spell assembly. And the jade cicada vine. She came to Burnt City for the jade cicada vine. This thing grew on the cliff and was very difficult to pick. The container for the jade cicada vine was also very special. Only a box made of cold jade unique to the Northland could ensure that the jade cicada vine's medicinal properties would not dissipate after leaving the cliff. Meng-Chi staggered a few steps forward. She regretted it. If she had known earlier, she would not have finished that cup of wine. Xue Chengxian said that she could do whatever she wanted. It was just that at that time, she felt that Xue Chengxian was not bad. It was rare that other than her teacher, there was someone who could understand her thoughts. She was happy and drank it directly. Now she regretted it. She was very regretful. Meng-Chi simply stopped and stood in place for a moment. She shook her head again. She knew that in her current state, it would be very difficult to find what she needed. Meng-Chi looked around and walked towards the nearest teleportation array. She had been here several times and was familiar with the place. She stepped straight into one of the arrays. A light flashed, and when she stepped out of the array again, she had already appeared on the floating island of the Xian auction house. Outside the teleportation array, there were 7 or 8 cultivators guarding there. Ever since that auction, they had been ordered to take turns on duty and had been squatting on the profound floating island for a long time. At this moment, when they saw that someone had arrived, their gazes immediately shot towards Meng-Chi. But in reality, they were also slightly confused as they stood guard here. The order from the sect was for them to find the Xiuzha, who had made the Northern Darkness Dan. But who had made the Northern Darkness Dan, whether it was a man or a woman, how old they looked, no one knew. Other than that, they could only keep an eye on Xue Jinwen. Someone had spent a great deal of effort to find out that the Northern Darkness Dan had been sent to the auction by Xue Jinwen. Meng-Chi looked strangely at the Xiuzha on the floating island. She had come here several times. Other than the time she had gone to the Xian auction house, she had never seen so many people here. But she did not take it seriously. Even if she did, she could not understand it now. She walked straight towards the courtyard that Xue Jinwen lived in. When she was about to arrive, Meng-Chi found to her shock that there were even more Xiuzha guarding here. She hesitated slightly, but still pushed open the door and entered Xue Jinwen's little courtyard. The courtyard was still filled with flowers and trees, which looked pleasing to the eye. The door of the hall was wide open. Xue Jinwen, who was dressed in red, supported her forehead with one hand and lazily looked through the bamboo slips in front of her. Sister Xue. Meng-Chi reached out and politely knocked on the door 3 times. Little. It's you. Xue Jinwen looked up at Meng-Chi, surprise flashing in her beautiful eyes. She smiled sweetly, put down the bamboo slips in her hand, and walked out from behind the desk. Xue Jinwen waved her sleeve, and the outermost courtyard door closed. In this way, even if the Xiuzha outside had the ability to see through heaven and earth, as long as he could not defeat the master of sky beyond sky, he could not break the array left by the other party. Then, no one outside would be able to spy on anything that happened in the courtyard. Xue Jinwen walked to Meng-Chi and pinched her cheek. Did you drink? How did you know, Sister Xue? Meng-Chi raised her eyebrows in surprise. After drinking, use the jade slips to come to sky beyond sky, and you'll be even more drunk. Xue Jinwen smiled and explained. The master of this place said that sky beyond sky is not a paradise, but more like a dream. So if you come here after getting drunk, you'll be even more drunk. What kind of logic is that? Meng-Chi muttered. Are you here for something? Xue Jinwen stared at her for a moment, then smiled and asked, have you heard about the Medical Cultivators Conference, Labik? Netin. Meng-Chi nodded. She was an itinerant Xiuzha in her previous life, and her master was not a medical Xiuzha. She had only heard of the Medical Cultivators Conference, but had never heard of it. Then do you know that this year's Medical Cultivators Conference will be held in Descending Star City, and it will be hosted by Descending Star Pavilion? Xue Jinwen said slowly. I know. Meng-Chi nodded. She reached out to hold the door unsteadily. Come sit down and talk. Xue Jinwen laughed and pulled her to sit in front of the desk. Descending Star Pavilion is the top sword Xiuzha sect in the east. She sighed. After the news spread, I've heard many medical Xiuzha complain about this matter, and they feel that it's a disgrace to medical Xiuzha. She chuckled. My parents and elders also argued about this for a long time. In the end, It was my elder brother who finally convinced my father and the elders to settle this matter. Oh. Mengqi nodded. I know. She paused and said, but the master of Descending Star Pavilion promised to stay in the Starfall Sea for 10 years. No matter how you look at it, we're the ones who have the advantage. Xue Jingwen was stunned. A trace of surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes. Then she could not help but laugh out loud. If my elder brother sees you, he'll definitely treat you as his confidant. Do you know? He said the same thing to my father back then. Oh. Xue Jingwen imitated Mengqi's tone. He also thinks that we have the advantage. Mengqi's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She felt that she should remember something. However, her head was really a little dizzy. The thought flashed across her mind, and she could not grasp anything. She shook her head and found that she was indeed more dizzy than before. Sister Xue, Mengqi quickly said, I want to find something. Can I trouble you to help me? As she spoke, she quickly added, in addition to the spirit stones paid for these things, I'll also pay Sister Xue spirit stones. Thank you for your help so many times. Call me Sister Xue. You don't have to be so polite with me. Xue Jingwen pinched Mengqi's face again. She found that the slightly drunk Mengqi's face was really easy to pinch. Tell me, what are you looking for? The relevant records of the Medical Xiozha Conference and the Ice Jade Box. Okay. Xue Jingwen nodded. Come here again tomorrow at this time. Thank you, sister. Mengqi nodded at her. Okay. Xue Jingwen looked at her drunken appearance and shook her head with a smile. Go back and rest. As she spoke, she helped Mengqi stand up. How much wine did you drink? Why are you so drunk? 1 cup. Mengqi shook her head again. Xue Jingwen was right. In this sky beyond heaven, she really felt that she was getting more and more drunk. Mengqi did not know. And it was not entirely because she was in the sky beyond heaven. The wine she drank had a strong after effect. The wine that Xue Chengxian and the others wanted was one of the best wine in Rosy Lane. Foundation establishment cultivators once came to Rosy Lane to drink. After 3 cups, they fell to the ground and were drunk for a day and a night. Mengqi was not a drinker at all. 1 cup was enough to make her drunk. Let's go. I'll send you to the teleportation array. Xue Jingwen shook her head and helped Mengqi stand up. As she spoke, she helped Mengqi walk out of the door. The eyes of the cultivators who were staring at her lit up when they saw her and Mengqi come out. But soon, those people looked away in disappointment. She looked like a very young girl. She did not look like a medical cultivator who could refine such a special dark north pill. She was probably one of Xue Jingwen's good friends who came to the sky beyond heaven to play with her. Xue Jingwen's lips curled up slightly. So what was the use of these people waiting here? Even if they saw little Qi, they would not recognize her as the person they were looking for. She accompanied Mengqi to the teleportation array. Mengqi stood up and said to Xue Jingwen, Sister Xue, I can do it myself. You should go back. Okay. Xue Jingwen nodded. She smiled at Mengqi. Bringing the Dark North pill back to the Xue family also caused a huge uproar. The Xue family in the Westland was the leader of the medical cultivators in the 3,000 worlds. But even they had no way of figuring out how the medicinal pills were refined. The elders in the family also wanted to ask Xue Jingwen about little Qi. Only her big brother stood his ground and stopped the elders from asking her. Xue Jingwen knew since she was a child that her big brother would be the future head of the Xue family, and possibly the leader of the Wind Alliance. The elders had high hopes for him, and he was indeed talented. He had never disappointed anyone. But sometimes even her father, who valued her big brother the most, could not understand what her big brother was thinking. But this was good. With such a big brother, the Xue family would not be too unbearable. She could still happily stay at home. Xue Jingwen watched as little Qi stepped into the teleportation array. Just as she was about to turn and leave, she suddenly turned back. She wanted to call out to little Qi, but the teleportation array was activated and the other party disappeared. Xue Jingwen was stunned and quickly walked into the teleportation array. Mengqi felt that she was right. But when the light flashed and she walked out of the teleportation array again, she found that she had arrived at a place she had never been to before. She looked around and could only see the blue sky and white clouds around her. It seemed to be much higher than the floating island with the Xian family. She looked around and could not see any other floating islands in the sky. Where was this? Her head was getting dizzier and dizzier as she walked forward unsteadily. Before she took a few steps, Meng Qi's legs turned to jelly. She suddenly staggered and fell forward. A man in a white robe who had appeared behind her suddenly stepped forward. A trace of helplessness flashed across his face. In the end, he stretched out his arm and steadily caught Meng Qi's falling body. Chapter 44. Xue Jinwen stepped into the teleportation array that Meng Qi entered. In a flash, she was already standing in front of a tall building with carved beams and painted rafters. The sound of the celestial moon could be heard from inside the building, and the air was filled with a strange fragrance. This was Heavens Beyond Heaven building, located on the second highest floating island in Heavens Beyond. Xue Jinwen looked around, but did not see Meng Qi. Strange, she was one step slower than him, and entered the same teleportation array almost at the same time. Moreover, little Qi was so drunk that he fell down and could not walk steadily. He should not be able to walk very fast. However, there was no one outside Heavens Beyond Heaven building except for a few servants standing there. Did she see wrongly? Xue Jinwen looked around thoughtfully. She clearly saw Meng Qi step out and step on the edge of the array that led to Heavens Beyond Heaven building. She should have gone to the left, to the teleportation array that led to the city gate. Maybe she really saw wrongly. Xue Jinwen shook her head. She turned around and returned to the island where the Xian auction house was located. Little Qi wanted the records of the medical cultivators assembly and the cold jade box. These two things were not too difficult. She thought about it and simply left Heavens Beyond and returned to the Xue family. The Xue family was the largest medical cultivator sect in the Westland, and one of the 4 major families of the Wind Alliance. Almost all the medical cultivators in the 3,000 worlds who had ears knew about this medical cultivator sect that had been passed down for thousands of years. Xue Jinwen came out of her room and walked towards the family's library. The Xue family was one of the 4 major families of the Wind Alliance. It should be said that for the past 500 years, all the leaders of the Wind Alliance came from the Xue family. In addition, Xue Jinwen's elder brother was the most popular candidate for the next leader of the Wind Alliance. Vaguely, the Xue family already had the demeanor of the number 1 family of the Wind Alliance. The family's library was vast. Even Xue Jinwen had never thought that she would be able to read all the books one day. She entered the 12-story wooden building. The stairs spiraled up, and there were no stairs on the top 3 floors. There was also the defensive formation set up by the ancestors of the Xue family, which was activated to protect the library. Third young mistress. The Xue family member who was in charge of guarding the library nodded and greeted Xue Jinwen. His expression was not respectful, but it was still polite. Xue Jinwen returned the greeting and headed to the 4th floor of the library. There were many records of the history of medical cultivation in the 3,000 worlds, ancient stories, and the bamboo slips of famous medical cultivators. She looked along the bookshelves that almost reached the ceiling and finally landed on the innermost row of bookshelves. Medical Cultivation Assembly. Xue Jinwen looked at the words engraved on the bookshelf and thought to herself, this is it. In the Heavens Beyond Heaven, there might be many bamboo slips with records of the Medical Cultivation Spell Assembly, but they would not be more complete than the Xue families. Xue Jinwen really liked little Qi. Since this was not a family inheritance that needed to be kept a secret, she decided to return home and make a copy of all the bamboo slips that recorded the Medical Cultivation Assembly for little Qi. Third young mistress. Xue Jinwen was about to take the bamboo slips on the bookshelf when a sweet female voice came from behind her. What are you looking for? Medical Cultivation Spell Assembly? Before Xue Jinwen could answer, the person read out the words engraved on the bookshelf. Third young mistress, do you want to go to this year's Medical Cultivation Spell Assembly? Xue Jinwen's raised hand froze and a trace of sadness flashed across her eyes. Her back was still facing the woman who called her third young mistress, and she knew that the woman could not see her expression at this moment. Xue Jinwen closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Her lips were already curled into a charming and lazy smile. She turned around and bowed respectfully to the woman standing behind her. Eldest young mistress. Next to the bookshelf was a tall and slender beautiful woman. She was wearing a long yellow dress, and her features were picturesque. Her long black hair was tied up in an elegant bun with a few small and round pearls. Based on appearance alone, the woman who Xue Jinwen called eldest young mistress was more beautiful than her. Moreover, she was dignified and elegant, and it was obvious that she came from a prestigious family. This person was Xue Jinwen's eldest young mistress, Xue Zichen. She faintly glanced at her third young mistress. Father didn't say that he would take you to the medical cultivation spell assembly this time. She paused and said, Father hopes that you can concentrate on cultivation. I'm 5 years younger than you, and I've already formed my gold core. I'll soon break through the 3rd stage and become a 4th stage medical cultivator. As a member of the Xue family, you can't fall behind others. Do you understand? Yes. Xue Jinwen smiled sweetly. Eldest young mistress, you're right. I'll definitely concentrate on cultivation and live up to father and eldest young mistress expectations. When you reach the 4th stage, I might be able to persuade father to take you to the medical cultivation spell assembly 10 years later. Xue Zichen flicked her sleeves. Go ahead. Thank you, eldest young mistress. Xue Jinwen bowed to her and turned to walk out of the library. Xue Zichen did not leave immediately. She was still looking at the row of tall bookshelves in front of her. In the library, Xue Jinwen's footsteps gradually faded away, and finally, it became quiet again. Come out. Xue Zichen's gaze turned slightly and swept to the side. A smile appeared on her face. How long are you going to hide? A chuckle came from behind a bookshelf not far away. A girl who looked at most 17 or 18 years old walked over quickly. Eldest young mistress. She also called Xue Zichen eldest young mistress. She was Xue Jinwen's younger sister, Xue Lingfeng. She was also the genius girl who was just praised by Xue Zichen. In front of her eldest young mistress, Xue Lingfeng was much more relaxed and lively than Xue Jinwen. She hugged Xue Zichen's arm and shook it. I knew that third young mistress would want to go, but why doesn't father let her go? You. Xue Zichen shook her head and chuckled. Xue family members can't lose face when they go out. Oh. Xue Lingfeng nodded. No wonder father doesn't let third young mistress come out every time he meets guests. Father brought me to the medical cultivation spell assembly this time, but he didn't bring third young mistress. So that's why. Let's not talk about her. Xue Zichen played down her third young mistress and looked at Xue Lingfeng with a smile. Big brother sent news that he met that person in Burnt City. Xue Lingfeng was confused. Who did he meet? The person that a certain someone has been thinking about. He asked me about him 3 times in a day. Su Junmo. Xue Lingfeng jumped up happily. Big brother is so annoying. I said that I wanted to go with him, but he didn't let me. Annoying. As she spoke, she let go of Xue Zichen's arm. Eldest young mistress, I'm going to look for big brother. You. Xue Zichen's face flashed a trace of amusement. Girls should be more reserved. Why should I be reserved? Xue Lingfeng said righteously. If I like him, I like him. I just want to become Dao companions with Su Junmo double. You're crossing the line. Xue Zichen shook her head and interrupted the most favored youngest young mistress in the family. She reached out and gently smoothed Xue Lingfeng's hair. Go, I'll talk to father. Okay. Xue Lingfeng turned around and was about to leave. Oh right. Xue Zichen called out to her again. Don't tell your third sister about this. You know she also. I know. Xue Lingfeng chuckled. She thought for a while and said, but Su Junmo doesn't care about her at all. Before he went to the east, he came to say goodbye to us and didn't even ask third sister about it. What's the point of forcing something that's destined to not belong to you? Third sister's cultivation progress is so slow. Maybe it's because she hasn't resolved the knot in her heart. Lingfeng. Xue Zichen frowned. I know, I won't say it in front of third sister. Xue Lingfeng smiled and ran out of the library. Eldest young mistress, I'll leave first. I'll leave father in your care. At this moment, on the highest floating island in the sky beyond heaven, white clouds floated leisurely. Meng-Chi only felt that her head was getting dizzier and dizzier. It was as if she was stepping on clouds. She knew that the more she walked, the more unstable she became. Clearly, the ground in front of her was very flat. Every step she took was uneven and uneven. Ugh. Meng-Chi took a few more steps and suddenly staggered. Her legs gave way, and she fell to the ground. Before she touched the ground, she felt a grip on her waist. A strong arm firmly supported her waist and steadied her body. "Thank you." Meng-Chi opened her eyes wide and shook her head. She was really dizzy. She wanted to stand up straight, but she couldn't exert any strength. It was as if her hands and feet didn't belong to her anymore. She couldn't control them at all. Was this how it felt to be drunk? Meng-Chi even thought that she was hallucinating. Behind her, she heard a soft sigh that was almost inaudible. The sigh was very short and soft, as if it came from a very, very far away place. However, it sounded so familiar. "You." She opened her mouth, but before she could say anything else, the world in front of her suddenly turned upside down. The hand that supported her waist just now exerted force. Someone carried her completely powerless body horizontally. The soft robe gently brushed against Meng-Chi's cheek. She was completely unable to think, and a blank expression flashed through her mind. This way of carrying her, was it? Meng-Chi looked up in a daze. Her gaze fell straight into a pair of brighter eyes. Those eyes were as deep as ink, like the night sky. It was impossible to see through the eyes' owner's thoughts. His eyelashes were very long and thick, but coupled with his handsome long eyebrows and straight nose, he didn't give off a feminine feeling. Meng-Chi was in a daze. She stared blankly and almost couldn't believe that the white-robed man in front of her carried her so easily. Her lips trembled slightly, but she couldn't make a sound. The white-robed man didn't speak. He silently carried Meng-Chi and walked forward. This was already the highest floating island in the sky beyond heaven. White clouds floated around them. As far as the eye could see, the blue sky was behind them. The magnificent sky beyond heaven city was under their feet. One floating island after another floated at a lower level. Even the closest sky beyond heaven tower seemed to be separated by clouds. The scenery on the island was extremely beautiful. The white-robed man carried Meng-Chi easily and walked forward. On both sides of them, there were clear springs and flowers, and there were lush forests and tall bamboos. Not far away, one could even see white clouds pouring down like a waterfall. It was so beautiful that it didn't seem like a mortal world. This was probably the most quiet and peaceful paradise in the sky beyond heaven. Very few people were allowed to enter. But Meng-Chi didn't even look at the scenery here. Her eyes were wide open, and she stared at the white-robed man without blinking. Her groggy head made it impossible for her to even clear her thoughts. But even if she was drunk, even if it had been many years, she would never mistake the man in front of her. The white-robed man had already walked into a courtyard with Meng-Chi in his arms. There were only 2 rooms in the courtyard, and one of the doors was open. He strode in with Meng-Chi in his arms and carefully placed her on the spacious bed in the room. The bed was covered with soft brocade, and there was an ink landscape bed curtain hanging on it. Meng-Chi's thin body looked small on the bed, and it was actually somewhat lovable. The white-robed man suddenly raised his hand and rubbed Meng-Chi's head, just like how she always liked to do to him. He quickly withdrew his hand, and he couldn't help but find it funny. Why was he angry with a little girl? Although Meng-Chi did do something very excessive to him, she was still a kind girl after all. And she didn't know that he was Meng-Chi. The white-robed man called out to Meng-Chi in a low voice. His voice was cold and pleasant, and when he deliberately lowered it, it had a faint soothing power. As if he was coaxing Meng-Chi, he leaned over slightly, looked into Meng-Chi's eyes and asked softly, "Can you hear me?" Meng-Chi was stunned, but she still nodded slowly. As if rewarding her, the white-robed man reached out and rubbed Meng-Chi's hair again. This time he didn't withdraw his hand so quickly, and his slender and dry fingers stayed on her hair for a moment longer. "Meng-Chi, tell me," he asked patiently, "who did you learn the art of array formation from?" He watched Meng-Chi enter the outland today and deliberately followed her because of this. For this, he even did not hesitate to activate the teleportation array, and send her to the 7th island of the Outland. He also used some tricks to make Meng-Chi even more drunk. Otherwise, no matter how good the wine in Rosy Lane was, it would only be a cup. Meng-Chi wouldn't be so drunk. The art of array formation. Meng-Chi muttered and repeated his words. Her head was really dizzy, and she couldn't react for a long time. What array formation? She looked at the white-robed man's eyes blankly and asked. An array for alchemy, a protective array, and an array that absorbs the spiritual energy of spirit stones for your use. And the white-robed man's eyes flashed slightly, and it fell on Meng-Chi's wrist. The array engraved on the medicine knife. He asked, "Who taught you?" "Who taught me?" Meng-Chi still looked confused. She looked at the white-robed man in a daze. The other party had sharp eyebrows and starry eyes, and his appearance didn't look feminine at all. However, that face was really too favored by the heavens, and it was really flawless, perfect, and impeccable. It was really a peerless beauty. Yes. The white-robed man smiled at her. His smile was indifferent, and it didn't reach his eyes. "Who taught you these arrays?" He had to get to the bottom of this problem. Meng-Chi was a chi refinement cultivator, even if she had already built her foundation. However, once she made a move from the fire array for alchemy to the array engraved on the medicine knife, and the protective array. Most importantly, she even knew the star array of the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. The white-robed man was a great expert in the study of arrays, and he was outstanding even among the Sky Demons. He could tell at a glance that Meng-Chi had definitely been trained and taught by a famous master. And this master was very likely from the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. The white-robed man's gaze became slightly cold. He wanted to see which clansman would teach such an important formation to a cultivator in the Chi disciple stage. Meng-Chi's eyes turned red. She suddenly reached out and grabbed the man's white robe tightly. "Master!" Meng-Chi's voice choked. However, she didn't cry out loud. Instead, she tightly gripped the robe in her hands, tried her best to raise her upper body, and leaned into the other party's arms. "Master!" Meng-Chi's thin shoulders trembled slightly. Her voice also trembled violently. "Don't you want me anymore?" "Ooh." A low sob overflowed from her mouth, but she was soon forcefully held back. The white-robed man's entire body stiffened. He didn't understand how things had suddenly turned out like this. He slowly lowered his head stiffly. He could only see the girl's thin and slender shoulders. The other party should be having a hard time holding it in. Her shoulders twitched slightly, but he could barely hear her crying. Occasionally, there would be one or two sobs coming from her mouth. Master the white-robed man became confused. He had never taken in a disciple, and had been alone for 1,000 years. He couldn't be more unrestrained. Why would someone suddenly grab him and call him master? "You." His body stiffened as he looked at the girl who was clearly crying very sadly, but was holding back her sobs. The words were about to come out of his mouth, but he swallowed them back down. "You." He raised his hand stiffly and placed it in the air for a long time. Then he gently placed it on Meng-Chi's shoulder. "Don't cry. Boo-hoo." Meng-Chi didn't listen to him this time. "I miss you so much. I've been looking for you for a long time, but I don't know where to find you." She choked with sobs. "I can only wait to see you again." Meng-Chi raised her head and looked at the white-robed man with red eyes. Her long eyelashes were wet with tears, and there were tear stains on her fair little face. She looked pitiful and cute. The white-robed man had seen many times that she was calm and composed, and even a little sly. This was the first time he had seen Meng-Chi like this. It turned out that the appearance of a strong and brave person when she cried was so lovable. He had seen beauties more beautiful than Meng-Chi cry, but they wouldn't make him feel like this. The white-robed man almost blamed himself for the accusation in Meng-Chi's words. But he suddenly came to his senses and looked at Meng-Chi, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She was still looking at him with a pair of tear-stained eyes. Her gaze was clear, and she looked as pitiful as a fawn. "I'm not your master," he explained patiently. "I've never accepted a disciple, not in the past and not in the future." As soon as he said that, he regretted it. Meng-Chi's mouth flattened. She didn't speak or make a sound, but her tears kept falling down. How could she cry so much? The white-robed man had never had the experience of coaxing someone since he was born. For the first time in his life, he felt helpless. It was a feeling of powerlessness that he had never felt before, even when he was seriously injured. Don't cry. He had forgotten what he was going to do. He also didn't remember that he was going to ask how Meng-Chi learned such an important thing as the star formation. He was at a loss for a moment, then reached out and grabbed a brocade pouch from the side. These are all for you. Meng-Chi sob. She still didn't speak, and her tears kept falling. As expected, her master didn't want to acknowledge her. That was true. He had said many times that he didn't want her as his disciple. Although he had never really abandoned her, he did say that he wasn't her master. Was it because her cultivation talent was still too poor? When Meng-Chi thought of this, she cried even more sadly. She usually wouldn't be like this, but now that she was drunk, she couldn't control her emotions at all. More and more tears fell, and soon, a small tear stain was stained on her clothes. Don't cry. The white-robed man really had never had the experience of coaxing a girl. He was regretting it now, very regretful. Why did he trick Meng-Chi to come here? Why did he ask her where she learned the formation? She had learned it, and she didn't do anything outrageous. Instead, she had been using it to save people. That was nothing. These are all for you. As the white-robed man spoke, he tapped his finger lightly and simply opened the brocade bag in his hand. He remembered that Meng-Chi liked spirit stones very much. As soon as the storage bag was opened, the sparkling and translucent fluorescence instantly illuminated the entire room. Even Meng-Chi was stunned. In the brocade bag was a whole bag of 9th grade spirit stones. The spirit chi light was dazzling, enough to blind people's eyes. The trichiliocosm used spirit stones as a unit to measure the value of items. Spirit stones were also the common currency of the 4 realms. Including the demon realm and the devil realm, they also accepted spirit stones. Spirit stones were divided into 9 grades. When they were in the Cool Breeze Valley, the disciples only received 10 to 21st grade spirit stones after completing an ordinary sect mission. Later, Meng-Chi could make money, and the Dark North pill sold for more than 208th grade spirit stones, which was already a lot. That was almost equivalent to the entire Cool Breeze Valley's income for several years, including the sect master and elders. CXEWW. It was no exaggeration to say that after selling the Dark North pill, Meng-Chi was definitely the richest person in the Cool Breeze Valley. And now, in front of her was a whole bag of innumerable 9th grade spirit stones. 1,000 8th grade spirit stones could only be exchanged for 1 9th grade spirit stone. If a 9th grade spirit stone was used to buy medicinal herbs, as long as it was not a particularly precious heavenly material or earthly treasure, it could fill up the storage bag that Meng-Chi had just exchanged. She stared at the brocade bag in a daze, and her drunken head could not think of anything else. The white-robed man finally breathed a sigh of relief. He reached out and held Meng-Chi's hand as if it was scalding and asked her to leave her divine sense mark on the brocade bag. Okay, don't cry, he said. These are all yours. Meng-Chi. She looked up at the white-robed man, her mouth flattened, and tears fell again. Master. Meng-Chi sobbed and said in a choked voice, I can also earn spirit stones. Don't leave me behind. She reached out a little pitifully and grabbed the man's robe again, looking up at him. I don't need Master to raise me anymore. I can really earn a lot of spirit stones. I can raise you. The white-robed man sighed. He shouldn't have let Meng-Chi get so drunk. He raised his hand, and his sleeve brushed Meng-Chi's face. I know. The white-robed man was helpless. You're drunk. Have a good sleep. Meng-Chi answered and lay down on the bed softly. The white-robed man finally breathed a sigh of relief. Any investigation and questioning could be put aside for later. A drunk Meng-Chi was simply scarier than the strongest opponent he had ever encountered. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.